You are listening to Fantasy Filmball with Matt and Dylan, and on this show we turn movies into sports and look at all the Oscar prospects and their fantasy value.
I believe that this is going to win Best Picture, and here's why.
I mean, Denis Villeneuve got all the nominations he needed for Dune and still missed out on the Best Director slot.
Don't let me get my hopes up. The Academy has disappointed me too many times.
Thank you to the Academy. Thank you to all of you in this room.
I can't remember the last time I walked out of a movie theater on such a high.
No matter how certain it seems, anything can happen on nominations morning.
Never count the Golden Globes for just doing something off the walls and bonkers.
It's the kind of movie that reminds me of why I fell in love with movies.
And the Oscar goes to...
You are listening to episode 15 of Fantasy Filmball. My name is Dill.
My name's Matt, and this is a show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something that we don't talk about here. And this week we got a big one. Dill, how was your week, man?
My week has been pretty normal for me. I had a lot of work. I didn't actually see that many movies, but I got to read up on a lot of things happening in the world, including a lot of stuff that you were doing at Tiff, and I'm really excited to dive into everything that you saw this past week, because would you say you saw close to 60?
Well, you know, my week was also pretty normal, pretty average. I also didn't see that many movies. You know, I was just kind of vibing. No, I saw, at the end, I saw 47 films, technically 46, but I did see one movie twice. So I saw 47 films over the last 11 days. So welcome back to me, because I missed the show last week and I missed being here. But I have so many things to update you all on, such as movies, because that's what we talk about here on this show.
I mean, I saw 3 if we're being generous. So 46-3, I think that's pretty comparable.
I think that's pretty close.
And speaking of just movies in general, there's been a lot of movies that you've gotten to see that I haven't seen yet. But there's still some movies out there that we both haven't seen. So for this week's question, we got to go with what are your most anticipated movies for the rest of the year that were not showing at one of the big 3 festivals. And for me, at least, I feel like I'm cheating by picking Babylon or Avatar, because I feel that's everyone's pick. They're picking one of those two. So to go with something a little bit different, I'm going with a movie that's actually premiering today as we're recording this, having its world premiere, and that's David O. Russell's Amsterdam. And I'm really excited to see what he is making next. Not really, but that trailer, I don't know. When I saw Barbarian the other day, I had that trailer play in front of it. And for some reason, in a movie theater, that trailer just really worked for me. And I'm excited to see Christian Bale on screen doing a more comedic performance. John David Washington again, that cast in general, Margot Robbie before Babylon. There's just something about that trailer that is really just like, this seems like a good, fun time. Will it be a great movie? I don't think so, but it looks like it will be a great time.
Dylan, I'm just going to say right now, you're canceled. I'm canceling you. You're hereby done for. There is no supporting David O. Russell in this space. This is a David O. Russell free zone right here. No, yeah, that's fair. I mean, for me, the trailer doesn't work. I could not be less excited for the movie, but I'm glad that something about this trailer, something about this film has you excited, because, you know, this is what we like. We like having different perspectives so that we're not just agreeing on everything all the time. Because I'm sure that when Amsterdam comes out in like 2 weeks, we're going to have very different opinions on the movie. Very likely. I have a feeling if you liked the trailer, you're probably going to like the film. And I pretty much know this is not going to be for me. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm going to go in with an open mind. But also, I feel like everyone's sharpening the knives for this movie. And I definitely am too. So I'm pretty ready to not like it. But you know, you have fun over there, bud, with that movie. Anyways, so for me, I mean, you're totally right. I feel like it's a total cop-out to pick Babylon or Avatar, even though I am so excited for both of those movies. Especially Avatar, after the craziness of this week and TIFF and so many movies underperforming, I have finally put Avatar back in my Best Picture top 10.
Here we go.
Congratulations, Dylan. You're winning. Avatar's back in the top 10. But the film that I'd say I'm most anticipating is Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. I'm a big Black Panther apologist. For me, that was a film that I did think deserved the Best Picture nomination. And not only that, I thought it was the third best film nominated that year. I know a lot of people said that it had no right being nominated, that it was one of the weakest nominees ever. I think that's ridiculous. For me, I think Black Panther not only is one of the best MCU movies, it's also a film that I think had such incredible holdover and had such a strong hold over pop culture for that entire year, which is something, you know, that's pretty undeniable to say, like, yeah, that deserves to be in a Best Picture lineup. But also the thing that I loved so much about Black Panther is that it's the rare Marvel movie where it didn't feel like you needed to know anything else to enjoy it, right? You could walk into that movie, you can watch that movie without having any context, and it's just as good. Now, some people say that it's not good anyways, you know, no matter how you spin it. But for me, it felt less like a superhero movie and more like a James Bond movie. And the thing that I loved about that was that at that point, and still, I was very tired of like the same superhero formula regurgitated over and over. And so it was nice to see a movie in that series that really did some inventive things with the visuals, with the costumes, with the music, and that didn't feel like just another superhero movie. It really felt like a spy movie to me, and I loved that. And so for me, I just am so looking forward to seeing what Ryan Coogler does with the sequel here. It's my most anticipated outside of Babylon, because Babylon is like obviously top tier. And speaking of that, we got a trailer for Babylon just this past week. The trailer's a little bit old now by the time we're recording this episode, but surprise, surprise, I've been watching 47 films. We haven't had time to talk about this yet, so I have not heard your opinion on this. What do you think of that Babylon trailer?
I mean, from the moment it starts, Margot Robbie snorting up the Paramount logo, I was sold. Diego Calva looks really good in this. Brad Pitt, I mean, he's just a cool guy in general, so Brad Pitt's going to be cool in everything. Margot Robbie looks like a great time.
Canceled.
I mean, I got all the hot takes this week, I guess. But
tell me, how do you feel about Woody Allen's retirement, Dylan?
You know,
he's heartbroken.
This may take away some of my film credit. I've never seen a Woody Allen movie, so I have, at least for his professional side of his career, I can't comment anything. But for his personal life, yeah, retire. I don't need to ever dive into his filmography. But for this movie, Babylon, as far as I know, Damien Chazelle, he's a cool guy. He's a good guy. Nothing wrong against him. But this looks like a ton of fun. I'm all for it. I cannot wait to hear the score from Justin Hurwitz. The little bit that we heard in the trailer was just amazing. The production design, the costumes, all the acting performances. This looks like it will be insane, and insane in a good way. So, like, maybe this is not the, like, nomination leader because it's just too wacky. But regardless, Oscars aside, this looks like it could be my number one, my number two of the year.
Yeah, and for me, if anything's going to topple Everything Everywhere All at Once, it's Babylon. I mean, Damien Chazelle doesn't miss. I love everything he's done. The script for this movie is one of my favorite things I've ever read. I just love it. I think that seeing this trailer, we're looking at the nominations leader right there. Is it going to win Best Picture? Absolutely fucking not. No, it's not. But it's like seeing that it's undoubtedly getting every single nomination across the board. Because not only is it about old Hollywood, it also has energy, and it has drive, which is where some of the films that we've seen kind of flop before were like Mank. It got the most nominations, but it still underperformed a little bit because it missed out on editing and it missed out on screenplay. And this is a film that's going to get everything Mank got, plus those other ones. So I am so excited for this movie. I'm just ready for it to, like, blow my goddamn mind. Yeah, I'm hyped.
I mean, that's exactly how I felt watching the trailer. I can't wait to see this trailer in, like, a theater. They'll obviously have to recut it and stuff, but I feel like that will be a really good experience as well. And going from a lead actress contender in Babylon to another one that we finally got to lay eyes on them actually acting and not just posing really badly in a really poorly made film poster. We have I Want to Dance with Somebody.
That poster? You didn't like the poster where Whitney Houston's just like, woo, And like, what is that poster? It's so, it just like is like, yes, this is a Whitney Houston movie. Okay, I want to hear your thoughts first before I shit on this trailer, because I warn you, I am gonna shit on this trailer.
So,
what do you think, Dylan?
So we knew what was coming, obviously. From the poster, we knew it was going to look a certain way and be made a certain way, and it was going to be a very glossy, by-the-numbers biopic. So, at least for me, I don't see a need to overreact or freak out. If you're already high on this movie or high on Aki, you're fine. If you're already low on her, this gives you more reason to be low on her. I just hope, personally, she gets a scene like in Respect, where Jennifer Hudson had a scene or two to really showcase herself. Obviously, Respect did not go all the way, but I feel like this movie has a different shot because it's not coming out in August. It's not being dumped. It has the pedigree behind it.
Yeah.
Yes, it has the pedigree with Anthony McCartan behind it, and it has that amazing Christmas release date to go out alongside Avatar to be sort of counter-programming. So for the people out there who don't want to see the biggest movie of the year, they can go see what could be one of the bigger biopics of the last few years. Do I think it would reach the highs of Elvis? Probably not, but I feel like this is one that is not going to go too deep into the aspects of Whitney Houston's life, because there's a lot of positive, but there's also a lot of trauma and darker aspects to her career. I don't think this movie's going to go there, but we've seen in the past, the Academy, they don't care about that. They just want to see their favorite musicians and a very by-the-numbers biopic. And I feel like as long as this movie's not a total train wreck, and I mean, it could still be. I mean, United States vs. Billie Holiday still got Andra Day in for Best Actress, and she won a Golden Globe. So Aki could have the same path if this movie's just that, and I don't think it will be just that, because Anthony McCartan usually delivers at least serviceable movies at best, or at worst.
Yeah, so I had almost put this back in Best Picture, because obviously Sony's big contender, The Sun, we'll get into it a little bit later, but Tiff hated that movie. And so I took that out of Best Picture, and I almost was like, okay, well, what's Sony's big contender? I Want to Dance with Somebody. And then I watched the trailer, and the thing that's bugging me about this, and you might completely be right, that this is a film that it doesn't have to be good, it just has to be Whitney Houston, and it has to give the audience what they want, which is hearing Whitney Houston sing a bunch, and then, like, you know, that's the movie that everyone wants. But what I'm really feeling weird about here is that in the trailer, it seemed like there were like 20 different concerts that were showcased there. And it seems like, to me, the look of the film is it looks like it doesn't delve into, and Whitney Houston is a fantastic candidate for a biopic, because there was so much darkness in her life, despite the beautiful music that she made. There was so much darkness, and there's addiction that she fought, and all of these things that ultimately led to her very, untimely death. But it looks like the way that they're presenting this movie is like, they saw that people liked the Live Aid scene in Bohemian Rhapsody, and they were like, hey, Anthony McCartan, would you like to make a movie with us about Whitney Houston where you just do the Live Aid scene 20 separate times? That's what the whole movie looks like to me. Like, it just looks like concert after concert after concert, and that is not a movie. That's a music video. And I don't know if the movie's actually going to be like that, but from the amount of different scenes at concerts in this, it really doesn't give me the feeling that there's going to be any strong conflict, that it's going to go into some of the darker elements of Whitney. It just looks like it's a greatest hits album. And that, to me, is a total red flag. That is something that makes me feel like, Naomi Aki isn't safe. I know that we keep saying, like, there's a solid top 5, and there is a solid top 5 in actress, and Aki is in that solid top 5. But her, along with another one that we'll talk about a little bit later, are vulnerable. And she's vulnerable in this because it looks like they took the elements that people loved, that like voters loved from Bohemian Rhapsody, and we're like, okay, so what if we just did that again? And that the Academy doesn't like the same thing over and over again. I mean, we've talked about this in previous weeks. Films from directors that have been hits with the Academy before, they don't hit again. And the reason is because the Academy likes seeing things that are new. And, I mean, that's also likely why Rocketman underperformed the year after Bohemian Rhapsody, because they were like, oh, well, we just did that. So I don't know. I feel like if this really is just the Live Aid scene in Bohemian Rhapsody over and over and over again, with like a little bit stringing it together, it's not going to do well with the Academy because they've seen that before.
Definitely. I mean, the vibes I got similar vibes from the trailer. I think a lot of the concert scenes will be like Bohemian Rhapsody's ones, where they use the concerts as the quote unquote like montages to get you from one scene to the next. So like in Bohemian Rhapsody, it would like when it would time jump from a year, like from the start of Queen's career to like when they first meet to when they get into like their first big single, there was like a montage of like 3, 4, 5 different concerts put in a row. I think that will be the same feel here because I feel like this movie obviously has the same screenwriter. It's going to be the same type of feel, same type of story structure, base level trauma in their lives, not going any much deeper. It's just it worked so well then. I feel like there's definitely an avenue for it to work again this year. Yes, I know the criticisms of you already have the Elvis. Is there room for 2 of them? But I feel like since they're not the same type of music at all, really, there is an avenue for both to coexist. It's not like you have Elvis and you have like Bob Dylan, or it's not like you have Whitney Houston and you have Beyonce going against each other. You have 2 different genres of music where you can have those fans of both coexist while not like overriding each other.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I had some hype for this movie. I have had it in my Best Picture top 10 before, and just seeing this trailer really made me feel all the bad vibes. But who knows? I mean, I had all those bad vibes for Bohemian Rhapsody when that came out. I was like, oh, there's not a goddamn chance. It's getting crushed by the critics. Like and then it did it. And this could be the same. And I have a feeling I'm going to be hoping and praying the entire year that it's not the same.
Well, for a movie that you may not be as high on to one I know you are high on, we have Decision to Leave because you've already seen this. And for me, the trailer looked like a blast. The camera work, the editing, it all really stood out and felt like this is a very fun murder mystery to be a part of, to be on the journey, and just to be enticed by. Have you had a chance to see the trailer yet?
I have not watched the trailer. I mean, I've seen the movie, so I haven't been rushing to watch the trailer because I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, I've seen it. I know what it's about. I don't really need to, like, be teased by a trailer for something that I've seen. But I should go back and watch it at some point. I am planning on rewatching this film as well because I liked it a lot. I don't love Decision to Leave. I am notably quite a bit lower on it than some of my friends who are really enthusiastic about the film. It's good. It's good. It's like a very noir type film, a little bit romantic. It's interesting. But yeah, I mean, everything you got from, you mentioned like the camera work, the editing, the music, like all of those things are absolutely fantastic. So the vibe you got from the trailer is completely accurate. Like, this is a masterful film, and it's not getting a single Oscar nomination. I'm going to stick to that.
I had also been lower on this in a lot of my predictions. I know a lot of people out there have this in for that international director slot, have it in for a possible screenplay, have it in for the international contender frontrunner. I've always been lower. I feel like this is a fringe 5, 6 for international feature just because of its genre. That's a genre that the Academy has historically not really gone for. And we've seen them really embrace South Korean cinema the last few years. Just, will that trend continue, or they eventually be like, okay, we've had Parasite, we've had Drive My Car, is it time to reward another country? Because like you said, they don't always like the same thing again and again.
Well, also to clarify as well, just for viewers, because I know people are going to be typing, Drive My Car is Japanese. Like, yes, it's Japanese, but it also does have multiple characters and a lot of South Korea in the film. It was supposed to be set in South Korea. So, like, yes, before you angry comment that... Yeah, we know. But yes.
Thank you. Yeah, just spewing out of my mouth combines multiple aspects of the film into one. So thank you for the clarification.
All good. I think that there's a tendency, and I don't know how many times I've talked about this tendency, but there's a tendency in predicting for the Oscars where people go, this has happened before, so it must happen again. And sometimes they're right, and sometimes they're wrong. And the thing that is currently happening is that because since 2018, because we've had a string of directors from international features, specifically Cannes films, getting nominated for Best Director. We've had Pavel Pawlikowski in 2018 for Cold War, then we had Bong Joon-ho in 2019, then Thomas Vinterberg for Another Round in 2020, and then last year Ryosuke Hamaguchi for Drive My Car. So we've had 4 years in a row where we've had a foreign director in. That doesn't mean it needs to happen this year. So like people are really high on Park Chan-wook for this film. He has this is not an Academy friendly film. It's like a very twisty, convoluted thriller. It demands a ton of the audience. Like you have to actively be like in it every single second. I think it's a little like it's not that it's too complex of a film, but it's definitely a little bit too dense of a film for the Academy to really love. I know a lot of people are absolutely going to love this, but the metric that I'll say is if you look at the IMDb score of these films that have made it into Best Director, these foreign films, like if you look at Drive My Car from last year, I think that's floating around like a 7.6 on IMDb right now. Decision to Leave hasn't, like, it's had its full release in Korea, in France, like most of Europe has gotten it, most of Asia. We're just waiting on America. But already with those thousands of Koreans voting, it is at like a 7.1 on IMDb, and it's only dropping when it goes to the States. So like if you're predicting a movie with like a mid 6.0 IMDb score to get a directing nomination just because it's a Korean film, like it's not happening. It's not happening. I don't even think this is going to get an international feature nomination. And I will stand by that until I'm proven wrong. But I'm almost 100% sure this is not getting a directing nomination. It's not going to happen again.
Well, if you want another film that's not getting a directing nomination, it'll be Amsterdam. Some reviews just officially came out, and almost everyone is, like you said, knives are out, panning this across the board, saying it's a convoluted mess, and that Christian Bale is all over the place, and the cast as a whole is just not there. So I figured I would drop that in a little bit just to have a full circle moment here about 15, 20 minutes into the show, because as we started, we talked about, at least for me, Amsterdam is something I'm kind of excited to watch because it could be a lot of fun or it could be a kind of a mess. And it seems like so far the masses are saying a mess. But on the flip side of that, there's a film that a lot of people saw at TIFF that they said was not a mess. And it also had a trailer come out this week, one that I know you and I have been anticipating for a long time. And that was Steven Spielberg's The Fabelmans.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about it right now because I'm going to talk about it later. So Dylan, I want to hear what you think about The Fabelmans.
I've only seen this trailer once while I've seen some of the other ones multiple times, but the one time I did see it, I thought it looked like a lot of fun. It looked very different from Belfast, but also having a lot of Belfast vibes coming from it. It felt like Belfast being the base. This is like, okay, let's take everything there and let's improve on it. The camera work, the editing, the acting, the score, the production, the costumes, all of it. And it just looks like a lot of fun overall. And I feel like this is a film that is one that I started off not being very anticipated for, not being like, oh, I'm really excited to see this, but I'm coming around to it. The more I see stuff from this, the more I'm like, okay, Fabelmans is rising up on my most anticipated movies for the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you like the trailer, you're gonna like the movie.
Good.
That's what I'll say. I'm gonna be talking about the film very, very soon, so I'm not gonna say anything more right now. But if you like the trailer, you'll like the movie. Awesome. I know people who don't like the trailer, and I know that they're not going to like the movie. And that's not just because the trailer is like representative of the movie. It's just because like if you feel like this is sentimental, you're really going to find that the movie is like overly sentimental. I don't know. I'll say more soon.
Well, stuff that we do know is that the TIFF's People's Choice had its final 3 come out today in their ranking order, and
the People's Joker
like
and EO won everything.
I wish EO deserved better than this. It got
honestly
snubbed.
Stop the steal. Stop the steal. Like we need to send our own vote counters in to verify, because EO won. I will not accept anything else. EO is the TIFF People's Choice Award of the year.
Good. In our hearts, at least.
In our no, it's. I will go to court. I will start a pillow business, and I will bring this to court. EO won. You can't convince me otherwise. You can't.
You heard it here first, everyone. EO actually won People's Choice.
EO won the People's Choice Award.
So in that case, if EO won, that means everything had to move down a slot.
Yeah.
So that means actually coming in fourth place was Knives Out, Glass Onion. And with this coming in fourth, I said before it had to be top two to make it in a picture. It's in fourth, so in my eyes, it's not a Best Picture contender. This is the movie every year that places in the top three. That ends up missing. Yes, 2019 was an exception, but 2019 was a really, really stacked year. And I mean, rules are not rules, but like statistics are usually the way to go. And obviously there's outliers every so often, but I don't think there's gonna be two outliers in the span of like 3 years.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, the TIFF People's Choice Award, of the top three, it's typically like 2 out of 3 of those films get nominated. And like you just said, 2019 is the only year where all 3 have like been nominated. It's not going to happen again. I will talk about Glass Onion more soon. But I will just say good third place pick. Good third place pick. That's what I'll say. More coming soon.
Well, to hold off on more coming soon, we also have Women Talking coming in second, which is a movie that you've talked a lot about so far because, I mean, you read the book, you lived across the street from where they filmed, and without going into too much detail now, because you'll be talking about this in like 5 minutes, does it make sense to come in as the runner-up?
Okay, I'm just going to say Jordan Rumi can eat shit on this. There's been, like, obviously everyone's been talking, like, positive things about Women Talking, except for one journalist who's been, like, smashing it and being like, no one at TIFF likes this film. I was there. This film had the only organic standing ovation that I saw. Every other film that got a standing ovation, it was because, like, oh, Brendan Fraser walked out on stage. Steven Spielberg walked out on stage. Right? Like, this film, as soon as the credits rolled and it said directed by Sarah Polley, everyone was up on their feet. This is a film, like, I actually thought this was going to come first place. I thought it was going to surprise and beat out the actual first place one. I will talk about the movie more later, but I will just say good pick, and it should have won.
Well, that makes me really happy to hear that there was an organic standing ovation, because that's always something that I find very interesting. Like when people talk like, oh, at the film festival, this like movie got a 10-minute standing ovation. Obviously, that's not really organic. You're just clapping because everyone else is clapping.
No,
so the fact that it was so organic was just cool.
They, at 2 of the screenings that I was at, they had to stop the standing ovation because they were like, this has gone on for too long and we are going to run out of time for the Q&A. So after 6 minutes of standing for The Whale, for Brendan Fraser, which I will preface this by saying, the movie ended, the credits rolled, everyone clapped. No one stood up until Brendan Fraser came out. So it was very clear this is a standing ovation for him, and less so for the film. I'm going to try not to be biased on the film, but I'm sure it was partially also for the film. But that standing ovation was for Brendan Fraser. And again, they did have to tell us all to sit down and stop so that we could get on with the Q&A. And the same thing happened for Steven Spielberg. For Steven Spielberg, they did have to tell us to calm the hell down and sit down because, people just kept going and kept going. I think actually that the reports of the long clapping at Venice made people want to beat it. And I did actually hear some people in the audience saying like, oh, I wish we could have beat the Venice record for The Whale. So, but yeah, Women Talking, actually, I'm pretty sure every public screening that it had, it got a standing ovation.
Great to hear.
People loved this film at TIFF. And if you read on World of Real that people at TIFF did not like Women Talking, that is wrong. People loved TIFF at Women Talking. I think the press audiences were a little bit more muted on the film, but the film really, really landed with the audience there.
And landing in first was Steven Spielberg's The Fabelmans, another movie that we will dive in here just in a second. But since you're talking about women talking, why don't we get into just your overall thoughts on the movie? Because you had the first overall pick in Filmball this year. You picked Everything Ever All at Once. Obviously, that's the film that you're writing for all season long. But now seeing women talking, do you feel like maybe you should have gone with that with your first overall choice? Or what do you feel like this movie is setting out for picture? Because this is one, at least in my eyes, has always been 2, 3. But for you, is this up to like possible number 1?
Yeah, so I mean, right now we're getting into we're not going to talk about all the films that I saw at TIFF, because that is, again, I saw 46 films total. That's a lot. So we're going to go in order of the way that things were picked in the draft. So yeah, we're talking about women talking first because of course this was the second pick of the game. It's on Arno's team. And yeah, so your question was, do I feel good about passing over this film still, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes and no. So, okay, I'll start off by saying this is my favorite film that I saw at TIFF by a long shot. I think that it's absolutely incredible. It did everything I wanted it to. The performances were magnificent. I thought that the cinematography was great. A lot of people have been talking about the color grade being awful. I thought it was fantastic. I think it had a lot of purpose to it. Everything about this movie worked for me. It was funny. It was moving. I cried multiple times. It did every single thing I wanted it to. Now, to your question, I'm still riding for Everything Everywhere All at Once. If I were to place Women Talking in my best of the year list, it's currently my number 3. I'd still go Everything Everywhere, RRR, Women Talking. So do I think this can win Best Picture? Do I think this can be the highest scoring film of the game? I don't think so. I think it's a little bit limited in crafts. I think that it might get a costume design nomination. It's definitely getting a score nomination, possibly a win, because Hildur Guðnadóttir's music in this is fantastic. But when it comes down to it, this seems to be a film that everyone is going to like, but it might not have the same passion behind it as some of the other films. I think that this is going to spend the entire year in either second or third place for the Oscar. Currently we have a very clear front runner, which we're going to talk about very soon. But I think it's without a doubt that if that film falters right now, it's very likely that Women Talking could slide in and win. It's 100% winning adapted screenplay. 100%. Nothing else is going to challenge it, not just because the category is extremely weak this year, but also because the screenplay is just awesome. It's really, really well written. It's so funny. Sarah Polley said something super interesting, which is that in order to flesh out all of the characters, she wrote a version of the script from each of their perspectives. So before she wrote the full script, but she focused on one of them and told their story, and then she combined it all together. And so it feels like a very strong ensemble piece, and everyone is good in this movie. It's going to have a lot of support, and I think when the industry gets into it, I think people are really, really going to connect with this one.
I really dig with that point that you brought up about Polly writing the script and from multiple different characters' perspectives and then combining the parts to each so they can all showcase their highs of their character. And I mean, you read the book, you've seen the movie. Are Foy and Buckley the true supporting players? And if so, who ranks higher between the two of them? Or is this a situation like The Favorite where they're both neck and neck?
They are both fantastic. Foy is the one. Foy is the one.
Okay.
If only one of them gets in, it's Foy. Both of them are going to get in, though. So to break it down, on previous episodes, I had said that Jessie Buckley's character is Marish. It is spelled Marish. Her name is pronounced Marike. So Jessie Buckley's Marike, she is a very adversarial character. She's constantly pushing back and saying oh, but why are we doing this? Why are we leaving? She's constantly the one who is advocating against what all the other women are saying. Saying yeah, this is ridiculous. We can't do what you guys are saying. We can't fight. We can't leave. What'll we do? So her role is she doesn't have a lot of push forward. She pushes back always. But she is so good in it. She is a force of nature. But Claire Foy is the one to watch here. Claire Foy, she has multiple huge monologues. She has so much going on with her character. She has so much anger. We see her get violent multiple times. She is like a true force to be reckoned with in this. And even though I think supporting actress is pretty much locked right now for another actress that we're going to be talking about very soon, if anyone played spoiler to a certain blonde actress playing a certain director's mother, it would be Claire Foy. Claire Foy is incredible in this. I would also say Ben Whishaw is very likely going to be nominated for supporting actor. His role's not huge, but he does enough. He does enough to get nominated. Aside from that, every single person in the cast is great. Rooney Mara is very good. Sheila McCarthy's very good. Judith Ivy's very good. But the roles are a little bit smaller. Not smaller. They're all big roles, but they have less oomph to them. Whereas, like, with Jessie Buckley, she has a lot of scenes where she's arguing against other people, where she's yelling at others and fighting her point against theirs. And Claire Foy has a lot of scenes where she's yelling. And so, yelly performances often are more awards-friendly than the more quiet performances. Even though, like, Rooney Mara is fantastic, she doesn't have the emotional range in that character to work with. But yeah, the supporting players, they do align with the book. I was right when I said that Claire Foy has the biggest character. But that said, Jessie Buckley's character Marike in the book is not as big a role. Jessie Buckley really owns this character and steps it up a notch to bring this character to be a supporting player.
So the last question I have about Woman Talk Me before we move into our next movie is, some people have said Spielberg, some have said Chazelle, some have even said the Daniels, but for Best Director, do you think Sarah Polley is a play for the win, not just a nomination?
I think she's locked for a nomination. I don't think she can win. I think that it is way too... we just saw Babylon's trailer, which has insane direction. Like, it just seems like there's so much of a technical achievement there, and we know that the Academy loves going for technical achievements unless your name is Denis Villeneuve and you're shooting a film called Dune. So Babylon is the technical achievement of the year, and then the narrative of the year is very much a certain filmmaker who we will be talking about very soon, who made a film about their own life. So I don't think that Polley can beat those two, but she is, I would say, a lock for a nomination. As locked as you can be in September, she is. It's my favorite of the fest. And I'm currently predicting, I've got this in my top 3 for Best Picture, my top 3 for Best Director. I have both supporting actresses, Jessie Buckley and Claire Foy, in my top 5 for supporting actress. I have Ben Whishaw in my top 5 for supporting actor. It is the undoubted, you cannot say anything else is the frontrunner for adapted screenplay. This is the frontrunner for adapted screenplay. I think it's solidly in score. It's solidly in editing, because here's the other thing. The editing in this movie is there's so much going on. It's constantly, we're seeing so many different perspectives. We're getting a feeling for all of these characters, despite the fact that they're mostly all sitting in silence in a barn loft, listening to the other people talk. We still get a sense of who these people are, even when they're not talking, because the editing manages to show us how they're feeling, show us what each of them is doing at any specific moment. So the editing is really strong. I think it's in for the top 5 there. And I could see it getting a cinematography nomination. I could see it getting a costume design nomination. And this is top 2 for SAG Ensemble. It's between this and Everything Everywhere All at Once for SAG Ensemble. So those 2 films are going to be dueling it out to the last minute for that award. But yeah, this is a film that it's not just a film that is going to get picture and like a couple acting nominations and a screenplay nomination. This is getting nominated across the board.
Love to hear that. And another movie a lot of people have been talking about, it's going to get nominated across the board. You've been teasing it all episode long. Pick number 5 that went to the film drunk, The Fabelmans. And my first question here is one that... it could be a little bit of a controversial question, but it's kind of been like my MO for my draft board this year and for my predictions. But were the Fabelmans claims true? Is this actually not one of Spielberg's best? Or is this like what a lot of pundits are saying? This is Spielberg's like prime best movies since like Schindler's List.
Okay, I'm going to take you through a little journey here.
Nice.
So when I saw the premiere of this film, and I am a huge Spielberg fan. I knew I could get tickets for any other screening because, I'd be able to do more in my schedule if I didn't go to the Fabelmans. But like anyone who wants to make movies, Steven Spielberg means so much to me. Steven Spielberg isn't just the best Hollywood filmmaker of all time. He is the Hollywood filmmaker of all time. When you think of cinema, you think of Spielberg. And so to be in that room with him was just so magical to me. It like meant a lot to be in that space and to see someone that I've looked up to forever. And then the movie started. And I was very underwhelmed. Without getting into details, I would say that the first 30 minutes of this movie did nothing for me. It just felt like Belfast 2.0. And then the story moves a little bit. Spielberg's family, the Fabelmans, as he calls them, they move houses, and the story became more engaging. And basically, it started off slow for me, and then it picked up, and by the end, I was having a great time. I think it has one of the best endings of any movie ever. I'm not going to spoil anything, don't worry, but the film really picked up for me by the end. But still, I had that feeling of like, oh, yeah, it's a little overly sentimental. It's not really... I liked it, but I had so many reservations. And so when I started seeing people being like, this is one of Spielberg's best movies ever, I was like, that's making me kind of dislike the film. And I didn't dislike it. I liked it a lot. But I felt disappointed. So then I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back. I'm going to see it again. And so I watched it a second time, and I loved it. It did every single thing that I wanted it to. All of the flaws that I had with it being overly sentimental the first time, it felt so personal. It felt so beautiful. It resonated with me on a whole other level the second time that I saw it. It went from being my number 20 of the festival to being my number 3 of the festival. And so I had a great time with that film. So to answer your question, Fabelmans, was that true? I thought so at first. I did. And I think that a lot of people, I'm going to be honest, I don't think that the universal acclaim that's going on right now is going to last. I think when a general audience starts seeing it, we're going to see people on Twitter being like, this is a vanity project. Wow, why do we care about this rich white dude being sad about his parents getting divorced? Like, that's going to be a conversation about this movie where people are going to be like, people are going to feel like it's overly sentimental. People are going to feel like we've seen him do this exact same story before because he has made this movie about parents getting divorced many, many times before, starting with like E.T., I do think there's going to be some backlash against this movie. But that said, I felt very differently the second time around. I had a great time the entire way through. I think Gabriel LaBelle is incredible in this role. The supporting players are all great. The first time I watched, I did not like Paul Dano one bit. Second time I watched, I was warmer on him, but I still don't really love him in the role. Seth Rogen is my favorite one in the film. The first time I watched, John Williams' score did not stand out to me whatsoever. But the second time I watched, I loved the music. So really, I don't know. It wasn't that I wasn't in the right mood for it the first time I watched, because I was in the best mood of my goddamn life sitting down in that room. Steven Spielberg right in front of me. Are you kidding me? I was in a great mood. The movie just didn't click with me, and on a second watch, it did. But this happens every year. There's always one TIFF movie that I don't get on a first watch. In 2017, it was Call Me by Your Name, which I first off gave like a low 7 out of 10, and now I'd say it's one of my favorite films. 2018, If Beale Street Could Talk, I gave a low 7 out of 10. And now it's one of my favorite films. 2019, I gave Uncut Gems a 5 out of 10. I hated Uncut Gems. Now it's one of my favorite films. 2020 was the first time that I did something like I did with The Fabelmans, where I watched Nomadland. I was so excited for it. I liked it a lot, but I was like, 8 out of 10. Like, I don't love it. And then the next day I was thinking about it, and I was like, I need to watch it again. It's staying on my mind. I need to see it a second time. And then I loved it. And so The Fabelmans, I did that with this year. And I love it now. It's going to be one of my favorite movies of the year.
Nice. So I want to capitalize on something that you just said there, and that the last part is you talked about Dano, you talked about Rogan, but Judd Hirsch has gotten a lot of talk for supporting actor, and I would like to know from you've seen it twice now, who do you think is in, who do you think is out? Because this is a movie that a lot of people have been saying is going to be that double nominee in an acting category. And if two of them get in, or could you see just one, who would it be?
Okay, so the double acting nominee is definitely Women Talking. But if there's a second double acting nominee, which could happen, a lot of people are like, oh, there's no way that happens. It could happen. It could totally happen. So I will start with, I'll just say right now, Michelle Williams is winning. It does feel like it's done. She just shines on screen. And she plays two very separate parts of the role extremely well. Like, there's a very performative, and what I'll say about Paul Dano is the thing I didn't like about Paul Dano is there was a sort of rigid 50s parent thing where they just don't seem like real people, and they kind of speak like this the entire time, and like they just don't feel like real human beings, and Michelle Williams does that. But anytime that facade breaks, we really see that that's a role that the parents, both of the Fabelmans are putting on, that, you know, they're putting on this exterior of like, we are professional adults in the 1950s with a family because that's what we're supposed to be. So Michelle Williams, she's winning. She, every single time she has an emotional scene, she just melts your goddamn heart. But anyways, for the supporting actor category, because obviously there are a lot of people, I will go from least likely to most likely. David Lynch is not happening. David Lynch is not happening. Yeah, so with David Lynch, that's a big X. He's really good. But he has one scene, and I'm not going to spoil it. I will not say anything about it, and you should not read anything about it, because it is a scene that's going to shock you. It's a scene that is going to come out of nowhere, and it is really special. But his role, like, he probably has less than 10 lines total. It's funny. He's not a supporting actor contender. Okay. Then the next least likely, Seth Rogen. I liked him best in the film. I think that he brings such a warmth to this character. So he plays Paul Dano's character's best friend, who is like an uncle to the family. His name is Benny in the film. He's so funny, and he's so warm and so endearing. And the thing that I think is so good about him is that he brings that Seth Rogen character, but it's not, he does it in a way that it just feels like you understand that anyone could fall in love with this person. Like, this is someone who is just so warm and generous and good. At his core, he's a good person. And I could see him getting some traction, but that said, I think him being a comedian is going to hold him back. And I think that people, because his role is not very emotional, it's just very warm, he might not go the distance because of that. Personally, he was my favorite. Okay, the next least likely, I think Paul Dano could get into the top 5, but he is snubbable. And the reason being, what I said before, he has this very robotic exterior to him, where a lot of the film is like, son, here's how motion pictures work. The light goes through the film and onto the screen. Like, it's performative. And there are some moments, he doesn't have as many moments where that facade drops as Michelle Williams does, but there are a few moments that really feel strong. And Paul Dano, he's overdue. He has never been nominated. He's been in so many great films. So that could bring him to a nomination, or he could be left out and people could be like, what the fuck happened? I see this as a Katrina Balfe and Judi Dench type thing, where Katrina Balfe had a meteor role, but Judi Dench was Judi Dench, which is why Judd Hirsch is my number one here. So Judd Hirsch, I think, is a lock for supporting actor. He's in one scene of the movie, and yet in that entire scene, he just absolutely rips your heart out, and like he comes in with such emotion and such humor. He had the entire crowd laughing so hard constantly. He plays the great uncle of the family, and he basically comes in for one scene and gives Spielberg a little bit of guidance and says, like, this is what you need with art. And it's emotional, and it's also really funny. And I'll say that when I saw the premiere, when his character leaves, everyone clapped. It was a show-stopping moment. Like, it wasn't like, wow, he was good, he's probably in. Like, I'm talking, the audience erupted into applause in the middle of the film because of how good his performance was. So,
wow.
He's in. It's a scene stealer. It's a show stealer. You leave the movie despite the fact that he's in one scene, like an hour into the movie. He is the movie. Mm-hmm. You think about him after you leave. So he's in.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I really liked your comparison with Balfe and with Dench, but I think another one using the same movie on the flip side of things would be Dornan and Hines, because a lot of people early on were saying Dornan could be nominated. He's the father figure. He has a more prominent role, but similar to what it sounds like you're saying Dano does in this movie. He was kind of just like a generic dad. He didn't really have much to his character. While on the other hand, Kieran Hines had like one or two scenes where he was just maybe not to the level of what it sounds like Judd Hirsch was, but just like a show stealer having like the biggest dramatic scenes of the movie, and he ends up getting the nomination on the latter side. But you mentioned Michelle Williams, who's your leading contender for supporting actress. Is Spielberg still your leader for Best Director? And then following that up, what are the rest of the nomination haul for this? Because before you said Women Talking get anywhere between like 8 and 12. Where does the Fabelmans land? Okay,
so yeah, Spielberg is the directing frontrunner. Even if the film doesn't win Best Picture, which I don't think it will, Spielberg's winning Best Director. He has a narrative. So Spielberg, I think I said this the last time on the show, Spielberg has not won Best Director in an entire mat long, because the last time he won an Oscar was in 1998 for Saving Private Ryan for director. He was slated to win for Lincoln in 2012, and then he didn't. And that was, honestly, I don't think a bad decision, because I don't think he should have won for Lincoln. But at this point, Spielberg has not won as much as he should have. And if they're going to reward the film anywhere, they're going to reward him. It's going to be like Jane Campion last year, where even if Power of the Dog kind of fell out of favor for Best Picture eventually, it was undeniable in director. And the same thing's going to be said for Spielberg. This is his most personal film. It is extremely well directed. It has a lot of meta-reflective moments in it. Again, I'm not going to spoil anything, but there are some delightful jokes where it feels like Spielberg himself is speaking through the character and saying things that are relevant now. For example, and I'm going to be super non-specific so that this doesn't ruin anything, but there's a moment that he references, someone tells him to keep a secret, and he says, of course I'll keep it a secret unless I make a movie about it. Which is like, that's a moment that everyone in the crowd just lost it, because that's Spielberg speaking through the characters. Or like the ending that I said is one of the best endings that I've ever seen. I'm not going to say a damn thing about it, but it's a moment where Spielberg says, I'm still learning. And there's one simple camera move that happens where you can see Spielberg behind the camera saying, I know you all think that I'm the master, but I am still the student. I'm still learning. There's still more for me to do. And I'm just as excited now about growing and learning about film as I was when I was that kid. He's winning. If there's any race that is locked right now, it's director. I don't see how anything can topple Spielberg's most personal film. The narrative is delicious right there. And like I said, I don't think this is winning Best Picture. And if it doesn't, that's even better reason for Spielberg to be rewarded. And it's not winning screenplay. So if he's awarded anywhere, it's going to be directing, not screenplay.
So, I mean, we just heard about 2 movies that Tiff loved. They placed in the top 3. Now let's dive into 2 movies that Tiff did not seem to really like. And that brings us to our next one, which was pick 6 that went to Brother Bro, and that was Florian Zeller's The Son. And I've seen online this movie's brought out a lot of emotions. I mean, The Father, it brought out a lot of emotions, brought out emotions in me, but it seems like The Son may not be having positive emotions that's bringing out of people. You've seen it. What did you think?
Okay, dude, I think this is gonna be... I feel so bad for Brother Bro picking this first round. I think this is gonna go down as like an all-time... one of the worst first round picks that could ever be picked. I liked it. I'm just going to come out the gate and say I liked this movie. Is it The Father? Absolutely not. But I thought that it had some very strong performances. I thought Vanessa Kirby was great. I thought Hugh Jackman had a lot of very strong moments. I thought that the blocking was very strong. The direction was very strong. The script was weak, is what I would say, but I still think that I liked it overall. It was effective to me. There was a lot of people around me that really liked it too. There was the person who was sitting next to me was crying the entire movie long. And as we got towards some of the more emotional scenes, he was like sobbing and like dabbing his eyes with a Kleenex and going, "Don't do it. Don't. No, no, no." So that person was having a great time. But the thing that we're seeing here is that the people that don't like it, they don't just not like it. They want this film to die. They want this film to vanish and be burned from the face of the earth. And the reason for that is that it has an ending which is extremely controversial. And that ending is going to get a lot of reactions from people, and very few of those reactions are going to be good. The ending didn't bother me, is what I'll say, but it is going to piss off a lot of people. It's the type of ending where if you don't mind the ending, it's not going to be like, wow, that was an amazing ending. But if you don't like the ending, you're going to be like, that ending was a fucking travesty, and like people, they deserve to be drawn and quartered for that. Like I saw reactions at that level where people were like, that was so absolutely offensive. And again, I didn't feel that way, but Tiff did, and I think that shows that this is, well, for one thing, I've been saying for so long that Hugh Jackman is the best actor frontrunner, which means that this is in Best Picture. And now I'm going to say Hugh Jackman is not the actor frontrunner. He's barely in the top 5. And this film is not coming anywhere near Best Picture. I don't think it will have the passion. And if anything, it'll have passion in the other direction where people will actively want this film to vanish.
Well, you mentioned this possibly the worst first-round pick of all time. I still think I possibly could take that cake this year with picking Bardo over the Fabelmans. But you talk about Jackman having a chance to miss actor. So, I mean, we all thought he was a lock. So that brings us to the supporting cast, where a lot of people had 2 supporting actresses having a chance, a supporting actor having a chance. And I mean, not to mention the screenplay. So do you think this is a Jackman or bust type movie?
Yeah, at this point, I think Jackman is the only thing that is not even safe about this movie, but Jackman is the only thing that I think really stands a strong chance of happening. So I thought Zen McGrath was solid as the son character. He had a few scenes, like his last scene in the movie is god-awful. But for the most part, I thought he was quite good. I didn't have a problem with him. But he is getting called out on reviews for being absolutely terrible. So is Laura Dern. People really hate Laura Dern in this film. The only actor that's not getting any negative reactions is Vanessa Kirby. and that's not a mistake. She's the one part of this film that like really feels like it's working at all times. Like Hugh Jackman is quite good, but he has some moments where he feels very stagey. It doesn't feel like the lines that he's reading are like coming out of a real human person's mouth. It just feels like lines on a page. Vanessa Kirby, it always works what she's doing. But that said, the character is not big enough and the film's not going to be well received enough for her to get any traction. So at this point, yes, I do think that this is Hugh Jackman as the only nomination, if that.
Mm-hmm. So The Sun seems like it's not really a player anymore. Another movie that a lot of people were high on, including myself, was the 8th overall pick in our draft. Sam Mendes is back, this time with Empire of Light, which clearly from the review so far at both film festivals premiered at, this isn't 1917. This is something that may not show up much of anywhere, but you've seen it. What are your thoughts about it? It's above the line and just nomination haul in total.
Yeah, I mean, it felt pretty undeniable that this was the film that was going to be pushed, that this was Searchlight's pick. And clearly that has shifted. We now know that another film that we're going to talk about later, that's Searchlight's pick. But with this one, I went in definitely expecting something not great because I'd seen some of the reviews. But this is really, like, if you were to search up the word mediocre on IMDb, this is the film that would show up. It's not a bad film. It is just like the image of mediocrity. And that sounds extremely harsh. I'm sorry. That does sound harsh. So just a rundown on what this film is. It's the story of a young black man in England in the 1980s who gets a job working at a movie theater. And his manager is bipolar, and that's Olivia Colman. And meanwhile, at the same time, there's all this stuff with race going on in the Margaret Thatcher administration. And the thing that makes this film fall apart is it feels so impersonal. Right, we've got Steven Spielberg making his love letter to cinema, which is the most personal thing you can imagine. It's a film literally about him. Empire of Light is Sam Mendes doing the same thing, except there's not a trace of him in it. He said in the Q&A that Olivia Colman is meant to represent his mother, but you would never get that in this. It's a film that tries to tackle every single topic that was like a hot topic in 2020. He said that he wrote this film in the summer of 2020, and you can tell because the film is very much, it's like him being like, wow, cinemas are closed. I wonder if people will be able to share an experience in front of a movie theater screen again. And meanwhile, it seems like halfway through writing it, he was like, oh, the Black Lives Matter movement is happening. I should write that into the movie. And that's just what it feels like. And then, of course, there's the whole thing about mental health and the stigma around mental health. And the film is doing so many different things that no thread is really followed. And everything just feels like it's being tossed to the side, where it's like, yeah, there's all this stuff about racism, there's all this stuff about mental health, there's all this stuff about the love of movies, but none of it feels fully fleshed out, or nothing feels like the core of the film. Everything just feels like Sam Mendes was just throwing stuff at it and being like, maybe this, maybe this, maybe this. So above the line, the only chance it has is Olivia Colman, and she can miss. There's a solid top three right now, and it's Michelle Yeoh, Cate Blanchett, and Margot Robbie. And Olivia Colman is number 4, but she can miss. She's good. I didn't really love her in the film, but she's good. But that said, below the line, this does have chances. Roger Deakins' cinematography is gorgeous. Undeniably gorgeous in this film. There's such bright gold colors. It just looks so nice and warm. The score by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross is really good. Now, is it my favorite score that they've done? Absolutely not. I don't find it to be that memorable, but it's really good, and it does exactly what you want one of their scores to do. So I would say I see this getting 3 nominations, and it's cinematography, score, and actress. So is it a total flop? No. It's the type of film that I don't think many people are going to hate, but no one's going to love.
Mm-hmm. So you go from a movie that you called like all over the place and super sporadic with its ideas to a director who's really known for having sporadic ideas and his movies being all over the place. And that is our 10th selected film in the Filmball draft that went to Austin, Darren Aronofsky with The Whale. So, I mean, Hugh Jackman's out for at least winning contention. So does this mean Frasier's your new number one?
Yeah, Frasier's number one. I mean, everyone is saying Frasier's number one, and it's for good reason. I mean, we've been seeing all the standing ovations for Brendan Fraser, and that's not just because of his comeback. It's because his performance does really warrant it. Now, was this performance my favorite one of the festival? No. But he's great. So I guess the way that I felt about this, and my feelings were mirrored by I saw this film with a few actors who I will not name, and they all felt the same way that I did, which was Brendan Fraser was great. The film itself was a letdown. And the reason we all felt that, because we were all like, okay, what went wrong when the script is really good, the acting is really good, what went wrong? And the thing that I pose as what went wrong is the direction. It's a film that, for one thing, the pacing is all over the place. The film opens up with a scene where people are like jumping on each other's lines, and like it's so fast, even though, you know, to get into this person's world, we should be moving a little bit slower. We should be like taking it easy a little bit. And the film starts with a breakneck pace, and it kind of keeps that up at times. The pacing is really all over the place. It's either like so slow that nothing's happening, or everything's happening all at the same time. And so that's one thing with the direction. The pacing is really off. There's also like sometimes when I feel like the text isn't fully understood, or they're going with like the easy route. But for the most part as well, Darren Aronofsky shoots this film almost entirely in close-ups, which is a weird choice for a stage play, and a weird choice when you have some incredible makeup work done, not on Brendan Fraser's face, but on his body. And we spend a lot of the movie in close-ups, and it means that the blocking of the film is very weak. And so the blocking is what myself and the group of actors, who again will not be named, we're talking about as like, this is the blocking was not jiving with us. Also, the other thing with direction is Aronofsky makes a really strange choice for there not to be like a single moment of silence in this fucking movie. Like, Jesus Christ, this score is constantly telling you this is what you should feel. You should be sad right now. You should be sad right now because there's strings playing. Do you hear the strings? There are violins playing right now, and you should cry. And if anything, that made me not cry. Fraser's performance was good enough that I should have been crying, and I was sitting there listening to this fucking score that never stopped, that was just like hammering into me like, hey, cry right now, cry. And so I didn't cry. It didn't do it for me. The score bothered me because there was like barely a moment of silence in this film. But that said, the things that work about this movie really work. The screenplay is really good. The performances are excellent. I particularly liked Hong Chow in the film. I think I honestly preferred her even to Brendan Fraser. Fraser has a lot to work with, but I just love Hong Chow. And the makeup is brilliant. Production design is great. But there's just some elements to Darren Aronofsky's production design that bothered the shit out of me. Not production design, his direction. Sorry. Darren Aronofsky's direction just bothers shit out of me at times. And so I landed this film at like a light 7 out of 10. I was pretty disappointed, but there were some things that really worked. So this is the front runner for actor, though. Undoubtedly, it is the front runner. There's another film that definitely could play spoiler to it, but this is the performance that people are talking about. And because it's the front runner for actor, you know I have it in picture. We've seen all of the critics' reviews of the film, which are a little bit colder than what it seems like the audience opinion is of the film. That's not a mistake. I think that, and all of those people who really, are mixed on the film, they still like Frasier. That's pretty unanimous. But yeah, I think it has to get picture. But that said, there's the question, if this misses picture, can Frasier still win? I would say yeah. I'd say yeah.
Darren Aronofsky's a very interesting filmmaker to me because everything you're saying about this movie just makes sense coming from him. Like, this is why I've never really been high on The Whale, because Aronofsky's a filmmaker who's very, sometimes to a fault, self-indulgent. He very much thinks he can do no wrong. And sometimes that really works. Like, I adore Mother. I think Mother, like, all his choices that he boldly makes works. But there's other movies from him that he makes these choices and it's just like, this really is not working for me. I get this is what you're wanting to portray, but for me it's not working. That's really what it sounds like, at least from your experience with The Whale. It sounds like it is here. But we talked a little bit earlier.
Very strong choices here. And one thing I also want to just say as well, the thing that I think is going to catapult Frasier to a win is not just his performance, but also his humility. He is so humble. When he was talking, like he was so grateful to the audience to be there. And not just that, but during the Q&A, someone asked him a question about the makeup. And you could see him light up because he was like, I want to talk about the makeup. Like, I can't wait. And he answered the question in a way where he was basically saying, my performance could not have happened without the makeup team. And here's what they did. And I'm so excited to tell you the process that they did to get there. And he basically was saying, like, what they did on this film, it should be in a museum. Like, this is absolutely incredible. And the humility that he showed in giving so much credit to the others, giving so much praise to the team behind him that made his performance possible, that's the type of thing that wins Oscars. So, even if the film doesn't make it in, which I think if The Whale does get Best Picture, it gets in because of Brendan Fraser, not because of the movie. And if he wins, it's not just because of his performance. It's because he is a genuinely kind person who is showing so much support to the people around him.
I mean, just backing that claim up right there. Last year, we saw the same thing with Jessica Chastain with Isa Tammy Faye. Her whole campaign run, she was always gushing and talking about how much the makeup team really helped elevate her performance. And it sounds like Brendan Fraser did the same thing there. But moving into our next film, since we have a ton to get into, Film Drunk, he drafted Empire of Light earlier, but he did a good job. He cuffed himself up, and he got Searchlight's number 2 contender at that time, which now seems like his Searchlight's main contender, and that's the Banshees of INISHERIN. So obviously, from the raves it's gotten, and even won some awards over at Venice, this seems like it's Searchlight's main push. So with that being said, do you think Farrell is going to get his first nomination for lead actor?
I think he is, and I think if anyone beats Brendan Fraser, it is Colin Farrell. Colin Farrell was my favorite performance in the leading actor category of the festival. Not my favorite performance overall. My favorite performance overall was Claire Foy in Women Talking. But Colin Farrell is great, and the movie's great, and it was a big surprise to me. Not that the movie was good. I expected the movie to be good. But what really surprised me here was that it is awards friendly. Because I think I've spoken a lot on previous episodes saying just because they made one awards movie doesn't mean they'll make another, which remains true and The Sun proves it. But I think that Martin McDonagh has proved that he can do it again and again and again now. Because The Banshees of Inisherin is one that it's going to the Oscars, and I should have seen the warning signs. I should have seen the signs when Venice selected this film and not Empire of Light, because that should have shown to me, yeah, Searchlight's priority is the one that's in Venice fucking competition, not the other one. Searchlight's had years in the past where they've had multiple films in Venice competition. 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri won Best Screenplay at Venice, while The Shape of Water, which was also Searchlight, won the Golden Lion. So those two films both existed in competition. This year, this was the only film in Venice competition. That shows to me, yeah, this is the one that Searchlight is taking seriously. So I don't know why I didn't take it seriously earlier. This is happening. This is getting in for picture. It's getting in for actor. It's getting in for supporting actor. It's getting in for screenplay. And it's very possibly getting in for score. There's so much to like in this movie. Now, I will say, I've been hearing, I think it's, personally, I would say it's a great film. I'd give it a 9 out of 10. But I love Martin McDonagh so much. This is his weakest film in my books. But Martin McDonagh's weakest film is still an incredibly strong film for like anyone else. So that's what I'd say about this one. Yes, this is Searchlight's new player. Yes, you should have this in your Best Picture top 10. In fact, it's one of the only like safe ones in the top 10 at this point. I would put this around like 5th or 6th slot.
And yeah, when I saw all the reactions come out of Venice, I was like, okay, I think it's time I need to put this in, but I want to wait for Eyes on Empire of Light. And as soon as I saw that first screen, it's like, okay, yes, I have Empire of Light at 101 for picture, but I got to make this switch. So I also have Banshees in there. I have it, I think, at 18-1 odds over at Gold Derby. And speaking of 18, that brings us to the 18th film that was selected in our draft that went to Brother Broby and Knives Out Glass Onion. We just talked about a movie that we really didn't see the signs ahead of time for its rise to prominence, but this is one that we've all had eyes on, expecting it to do something. We were just too scared to take that leap to accept that it's happening. But now that it's come out, you've seen it. Do you think this is Netflix main push? Do you think this is something outside of screenplay? Like, does it have a supporting actress? Does it have a picture? Does it have like a score and editing coming along? Or is it just screenplay, just like the first one?
So I'll preface this by saying I loved Glass Onion. I thought it was better than Knives Out. That's a personal thing. Not everyone's going to feel that way, but personally, I liked it more than Knives Out. Knives Out is also a 10 out of 10 for me. So when I say that I liked it better than Knives Out, that is not me saying that Knives Out is bad and this is good. That is me saying that both are great films, and I just preferred this one on a personal level. So I loved this film. I think Netflix would be foolish if this was their main push. I do not think that this can make Best Picture. No matter what the reviews are, no matter what, the consensus for this film is that it's not as good as Knives Out. I know I just said that I prefer it to Knives Out. I do. That is not going to be the consensus. Both are great films, but I feel like the main thing that's going to be going through people's minds when they watch this, if they're an awards voter, is, yeah, I liked the other one better. Why didn't we put that one in Best Picture? I'm not going to vote for this one. We should have put that one in. It's the thing that happens time and time again. You know, that it's the power of the dog effect, where, you know, they go, I liked the piano better. And so with this, Glass Onion, it is a great film. I do see Oscar nominations coming its way. I would say I think that it's very strong in adapted screenplay, incredibly strong in production design. Oh my God, the production design is good. Oh my God, it's so good. If this doesn't get in production design, they're losing their goddamn minds. They need to put it in there. And I would say that Janelle Monáe is safe in supporting actress. Not safe in supporting actress. Janelle Monáe is in the top 5 for supporting actress. I'm not going to say a goddamn thing about what they do in this film, but their role is so layered. It's got layered like an onion. You can just peel it back. Wow. There's so much going on. And I feel like watching the film again, I'm going to get so much more out of their performance. Like Janelle Monáe, what they do in this film is so much fun. And I think it's going to make a rewatch incredibly rewarding. But that said, it is a sillier movie than the first one. The first one was, of course, also very silly, but it was not as, like, this borders on parody at times. And while it's very clever, it's very, very silly. It doesn't feel like the type of thing that's going to connect with voters. And again, the comparison to the first film is going to hurt it. It is. I don't see this making picture, and I think Netflix would be foolish if they didn't push another film of theirs, which I will be talking about very soon. But that said, this was Brother Bro's, I believe, third-round pick. And this is an excellent third-round pick. This is a film that has immense potential. It's probably going to get PGA top 10. It's probably going to get SAG Ensemble. It has a shot at editing, score, and the aforementioned things that I talked about. And who knows, maybe it's still a dark horse for Best Picture. Oh, and Golden Globes are going to love it. They're going to love this film. Like so many, all the nominations for the Golden Globes at this film. But yes, not convinced this is happening at the Oscars for picture.
Well, I'm a huge fan of Janelle Monáe. I love their music, and I love every time they've been in a movie. Like, I really like their performance in Moonlight. Obviously, that was a smaller role, so it was not one that could have gotten nominated. So I'm really gunning for them this season, as I've said on the show previously. But hopping into our next movie, which went 22nd overall to Austin. This is one that we talked a little bit earlier about Amsterdam having the knives out from the critics. No pun intended with us just talking about Knives Out. But there was a beer run that happened, and a lot of people said it was not the greatest of all time. But Matt, what did you think about it?
So we talked about how the critics are sharpening the knives for David O. Russell with Amsterdam, and that even if the film is really good, they're not going to like it because you can't like that movie.
He's a bad person.
He's a bad person. I wouldn't say Peter Farrelly is a bad person. Peter Farrelly is not a bad person. He's just a very simple person. And the films that he's made, all of a sudden, Peter Farrelly's like, I'm a serious director. And I'm going to make films about serious topics. And the critical establishment went, no, the fuck you're not. Absolutely not. And so with The Greatest Beer Run Ever, which currently has a 25 out of 100 on Metacritic, that's not a genuine number. What I'm going to be saying right now is that the movie is not that bad. It's not great, but it's decent. It's fun. I at times liked it better than Green Book. Does it have its problems? Yes. Is it very simple? Yeah. Is it worthy of like Razzies? Like a 25 out of 100, that's Razzie territory. Absolutely not. This is a film that I think people, critics, realized that they made a mistake with Green Book, and that their early acceptance of Green Book meant that it had a path to get to the Oscars. And I think that critics are jumping on this one early because they want to kill it, because they know that they paved the trail that allowed Green Book to win Best Picture, and they don't want to do that again. People were prepared to hate this one. It's not that bad. It's really fun. I was saying before when I saw the trailer that I was worried that this was going to be a film that spoke down about protesters, and that, of course it was a film about a character who was very dumb learning to not be dumb, which is what Peter Farrelly does. That's his thing. With Green Book, that was a character who was racist, who became less racist by the end. And with this, it seemed like a character who was like hated protesters and hated all of anything he deemed as un-American, who then, becomes less of an idiot by the end. It's kind of that, but I didn't think it was... I thought it was handled pretty well, because the film it's not a film about protesting. It makes no statement on that whatsoever. It's a film that it's very clear very early on that this is a film about how many Americans are afraid to change their mind. It's a film about how people say something, and then no matter what evidence is presented to them, they will not change their mind ever. They will stick to the first thing that they said because it was true then, and I'm not going to change my mind now. And so The Greatest Beer Run Ever is a film about how it is not weakness to change your mind. And it was sweet. I laughed. I thought it was fun. Was it overly simple? Yeah. But I wasn't going into this for Apocalypse Now. No one is. This is not going to be a complex, gritty war movie. This is a film about Zac Efron being a huge fucking goofball, delivering beer to his friends and being an idiot. It's fun. I would give it a 7 out of 10. It was... I think a lot of people are really going to like it, and I think that there's going to be a huge critical and audience divide on this. Now, is this going anywhere near the Oscars? No. the critics have made sure of that. It's not going to do anything because it's going to become a stigma where like you cannot like this film because it has bad reviews. So it's fun. I think you're going to have a great time with it, Dylan.
I mean, you hit the nail on the head of what I was trying to, I guess, like communicate when we saw the trailers. Like I was saying, like I may not like really go with like the angle it may be doing with like what you're talking about with the maybe anti-protester angle, but it just looked like a huge ball of fun. Zac Efron's a character, an actor who I don't think has been in a lot of good things, but he's usually the best part of what he's in, and he can really nail that type of comedy as seen from like the Neighbors movies, and even
the Beach
a little
Bum.
bit of it.
Dude, the Beach, Zac Efron and the Beach Bum, he delivers like that level of wildness in this movie where he's just like, he's so funny. I think he's so good in this movie.
And that's what I was really looking forward to about this movie. I think it's the same thing I'm kind of looking forward to about Amsterdam as well. Just being kind of like a goofy, like not good movie, but still like fun enough to like be involved and see just wacky stuff and funny people do funny things. And one thing I'm really looking forward to about this movie, and I don't want to spend too much time here because obviously this isn't a huge Oscar contender, but Russell Crowe is someone who's had a very, very interesting career path from blockbuster stars, and now he seems to be doing more like character actor roles. And do you think this is one of his like best of recent years? Like we talked earlier about this year of like in Thor Ragnarok, how he was like hilarious in that, and then like he's had other films in the past few years where he just goes all out. Is this a role like that, or is this just more of just a Russell Crowe just laid back?
He's really good in it. He's not a very big part of the film, which is disappointing because I did think that he was good, and he kind of brings everything together with the theme about, you know, not being afraid to change your mind. Because he's a character that he looks at Zac Efron at first as like, this is a fucking moron, and by the end he holds the guy in pretty high regard. Yeah, I don't know. I think that there's some important messages here. And while it's definitely a shallow film overall, I think that there's a lot of people that will need to see something like this to show them, yeah, it's fine to admit that you were wrong. And yeah, Russell Crowe does that well. Zac Efron does that well. I think the movie does that well overall. It's sweet. It's fun. Go in with an open mind.
Open mind, love that. But speaking about people needing to change their mind about being wrong, I've seen a lot of people out there still have Fire Love as their documentary winner, but I mean, we just had a doc win Venice, and it was picked 23rd overall by Arno, and that's All the Beauty and the Bloodshed. You've seen it now. Obviously, this seems like it should be the new doc winner, but do you think this could get all the way to picture?
Well, we didn't talk about that in our news segment, which is All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, directed by Laura Poitras, the documentary. Yeah, like you said, it just won the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival, which is not... it has happened before. Documentaries have won... including the last 10 years. In 2013, a documentary won the Golden Lion, and it was not nominated at the Oscars. This will be, and it's going to win. This is a film that I saw this on the second day of the festival, and instantly I was like, this is one of the best documentaries I've ever seen in my entire life. So to break down what the film is, just so that, because I'm sure that while people might know a little bit more about the greatest beer run ever, they might know a little bit more about like what the Fabelmans is, they might not know what's going on in All the Beauty and the Bloodshed and what is making it such a special film. So All the Beauty and the Bloodshed is about a photographer, Nan Goldin. And Nan Goldin became extremely well known for her photography, specifically her slice of life portraits of metropolitan life and bohemian life in the 1970s and 80s. She, in particular, shot a lot of fashion, and she heavily focused on the gay community in New York City in the 80s, which of course was a very dangerous time to be a part of the LGBTQ community with the rise of the AIDS virus. And so the film focuses on her life and her art. But meanwhile, it also is a film about an activist, Nan Goldin. And Nan Goldin, who used to be this photographer, she still is, of course, but she has recently become an activist against Big Pharma, specifically against the company that makes the drug OxyContin, which of course has caused the opioid epidemic in the United States of America and worldwide, which has caused millions upon millions of deaths. And so the film, if you think of the best version of a documentary about an artist, and you think of the best version of a documentary about an activist, and then you squish those two films together, you have All the Beauty and the Bloodshed. It is the best version of both of those films. And it cuts between the modern times. This documentary footage where Nan Goldin and her group, Pain, are going around protesting and fighting and not literally fighting, but she's quite old at this point, so she's not literally fighting, but she's protesting and she's fighting against Big Pharma. And then we intercut that with the story of her life and the story of how she ended up being addicted to opioids, which is why she's an activist now. We see the stories of how her photography was noticed, all of these things, and we jump back and forth. And structurally, it's so brilliant. It just oh my God, it's so good. But the question you asked there is, can this go beyond documentary? Yeah, obviously this is the front runner for documentary, obviously. But can it hit picture? We'll have to see what Neon does with it. But I would say if there was any documentary ever that would be nominated for Best Picture, it would be Hoop Dreams. And if there was a second documentary ever that was nominated for Best Picture, it'd be All the Beauty and the Bloodshed. This film is so relevant. It had the entire audience in tears. Somehow it didn't win the fucking Tiff People's Choice Documentary Award, which I don't know how that happened, because this should have ran away with that. But this is a masterpiece.
Well, that's great to hear. I mean, I would say the biggest positive it has going for it, unlike Hoop Dreams was in a field of 5, while this is a field of 10, so there's more space there for possible nomination. But I mean, we just talked about a movie that has LGBTQ plus representation to another one that you actually had on your team. And I think this is the first film that we're talking about today that's on one of our teams. Yeah. But that's Billy Eichner's Bros that you took 25th overall. And I mean, obviously, Everything Everywhere All at Once is your favorite comedy of this year. But do you think this is your second favorite comedy of the year?
So Everything Everywhere All at Once is my favorite comedy of the year, but Bros is the funniest comedy of the year. I'm talking there are 2 laughs a minute at least. There's not a wasted line in this movie. It doesn't go for more than 30 seconds without dropping a joke. It's so witty. It has a lot of great physical humor, a lot of great visual humor, and a lot of great verbal humor. So it's got everything. I don't see... with some movies, because the humor is so specific to one thing, there's some people who are going to walk in and walk out being that wasn't very good. With Weird Al, for example, which I'll mention a little bit more later. But Weird Al was a movie where it's if you don't like its shtick, you're not going to find it funny. Bros has the type of humor, it has so much of everything that if you like absurdity, you're going to like it. If you like wit, you're going to like it. If you like slapstick, you're going to like it. It's got everything, and it's so good. Could this get Best Screenplay? I actually do think so. I think that it has a chance. I mean, original screenplay is so stacked this year, but this one totally could get in, and it's a surefire hit at the Golden Globes. The ensemble is amazing. I could see it getting into SAG, especially because it has the narrative of being one of the first studio films to have an entirely LGBTQ cast. And I could even see a world where somehow this climbs its way up to getting into the PGA and eventually making it into Best Picture. I don't think that's very likely, but it's possible. I had a blast. Also, it is worth noting there's 2 songs in this movie. I can't remember the name of the credits song, but the credits song is not as good. There's a song in the movie which Billy Eichner sings to Luke McFarlane's character. And the song is called Love Is Not Love. And it is not only just a catchy song, it's really funny, it's very well written, and I think that song has a very good chance of breaking into the original song race. So keep that in mind for your song predictions. Love Is Not Love from Bros.
So, I mean, we talked about comedy globes a lot here today. I mean, Babylon should be a force to be reckoned with in that category. Everything Ever All at Once. Glass Onion, Bros here. Do you think Bros has a shot to win that category if it's a huge, like, let's say box office success? Like, let's say if it hits like 80 million or more, around the level, like above like what Everything Everywhere did, and probably more than what Babylon will do. So it could be the quote unquote biggest movie, even though Knives Out will have probably the most eyes on it. That's just a very competitive category without being like, since obviously the Globes are not what they used to be, but that's always just such an interesting category to me because it has a lot of different films that normally don't compete for like Oscars or above the line categories.
Yeah, I mean, I still think it's Everything Everywhere all at Once's category to lose, and I think that the Globes often goes to films that have Oscar chances, and I think that Bros, while it is the funniest film in the category, it probably won't be one that awards voters are going to go like, yeah, that needs to win.
Yeah.
But we'll see. You know, the Globes can do anything they want to. I think it's a lock for a nomination, but and Billy Eichner's probably getting nominated, and so is Luke McFarlane probably. At the Golden Globes, to be completely clear, at the Golden Globes, not at the Oscars, but yeah, this film's lovely, and I think that people are going to have a total blast with it. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on it. It's so funny.
I'm really excited. This is probably the movie for the rest of the month I'm most excited to see. And that includes Don't Worry, Darling. And that includes the re-release of Avatar. And
what about Blonde?
Yeah, we'll get to that later on another episode.
I was going to cancel you again. I was going to cancel you for looking forward to Blonde.
So Blonde's on my team, but this next pick is also on my team. Yeah. And that's the movie that was kind of my cuff. Like we talked about earlier, Film Drunk had a cuff because he picked Empire of Light, but also had Searchlight's number 2. I picked Bardo, but also had Netflix's number 2 for international, and that is All Quiet on the Western Front, which seems like it could be a better pick than Bardo, getting it a lot of rounds later. Matt, you got to see this, and all I saw on social media all weekend, or all week I should say, was this movie's really good, and I feel like you probably agree with them too.
So this one went 33rd overall. Holy shit, man. So I find it a little bit hard to put this in for Best Picture right now because Netflix has made no indication that they intend on pushing this. Mm-hmm. They're still going all out being like, oh, we're Bardo and Glass Onion. But I hope that Tiff has been a wake-up call for them, that All Quiet on the Western Front is something to be taken seriously because this should be their main priority. When I say that this is potentially the best war film that I've ever seen, I'm not lying. This film shocked me to my core. It makes Saving Private Ryan look like the Fabelmans. Like, it makes any other war movie look like baby shit. Like, it's so intensely brutal. And it makes war so horrifying. The way it does everything, it just so efficiently shows the brutality of war. It never makes any character into a hero. It doesn't like go out of its way to be like, this is an action movie. It's never like exciting, but it makes you feel like you're a shell-shocked soldier. Anytime there's silence in this film, you feel like there's a gunshot about to happen. You feel like there's a mortar shell that's about to drop. You feel like any character in front of you on screen could die at any point, and that is true. Literally, no one is safe this entire film. It's not one of those films where, you know, it's a war film, but we know that our main characters are going to make it through. Like with Dunkirk, where like at Dunkirk, you're like, yeah, these guys are all safe. This is brutal, and it's some of the bloodiest, most disgusting stuff that you could ever imagine. Now, why am I saying all of this as though like people are gonna like the movie I'm describing is not one that's very enticing. It is so well made, and it is so sensitive to the issues of like if you're making a war movie, you can't make war look like anything other than hell, and this movie makes war look like hell. There's nothing beautiful about this. That said, the cinematography, if Netflix chooses to push this wins cinematography. It is a gorgeous film to look at, but it's never gorgeous in a way where it's like, wow, this sure does look pretty for, a war film. Like it's dirty, it's gray, it's muck, and the camera work is stunning. So how I feel about this right now is if Netflix decides to push this is in. This could get 10 plus nominations. This could get picture, director, actor, screenplay. It could win cinematography. It could be in editing. It could be in score, which is great. It could win international. It could be in makeup. It could win sound or be nominated for sound. It could be in visual effects. It could get all of those nominations if Netflix chooses to push it. If Netflix chooses to bury it, it maxes out as like sound and international. And that's sad because this is, I would say that this is my number 4 of the festival. My 4th favorite film of the fest. It is a masterpiece. It is incredible. And if Netflix knows what's right, they would push Glass Onion to the side, because Glass Onion, yes, it's a great movie. Yes, it's connecting with audiences. Yes, it's going to be a huge hit for them, and All Quiet on the Western Front won't be because it's a German war film that is extremely depressing. That's not going to be a huge hit on Netflix, and Glass Onion will. But when we're talking about awards voters, they're going to resonate with this film, and Glass Onion is just going to be like, yeah, that was fun. That was fun.
Yeah.
This is like a once in a generation war film. This is the 21st century's Saving Private Ryan.
Well, that makes me so excited to see this. This was already one that was really high on my list. I love war films. 1917 was arguably my favorite movie of that year. Saving Private Ryan is one of my favorite movies of all time. The list goes on. Dunkirk was my favorite movie of that year as well. So this is one I've really been looking forward to, and all these rave reviews just had me so much more excited to see it. And honestly, this is what I also hope, putting my team aside, this is also what I hope Netflix pushes for.
They'd be
awards
so
in general.
Foolish if they didn't. They'd be so foolish. I will say also there were some walkouts of this film because it's so brutal. Like it is, there's some scenes in this that are just so hard to watch, and I think it was too much for some people to handle. Because, you know, when you go into a war movie nowadays, you're expecting something like Dunkirk. You're expecting something that's heroic and sanitized, and All Quiet on the Western Front is not about heroism. It's not a film about how the soldiers that went off to war were heroes. It's a film that's about how the soldiers that went off to war were being manipulated by the rich elite. And that they were being sent to die for no good reason other than for the glory of someone else, for a chess game. Like at one point in the film, one of the generals says that war in the modern era, modern warfare is like chess. And, you know, it's not about the individual soldiers, it's about the unit. And we see that in the film, that there's a total disregard to any of their lives. It is just about two rich old dudes with curly mustaches playing chess with each other.
Well, you sold me even more on that movie, but we talked about Netflix, a studio that we really don't know what they're going to do this award season because they have a lot on their plate. Now let's hop over to Amazon, who looks like they have nothing on their plate. And for pick 38, Arno went with everyone's favorite actor, the best actor of our generation, Harry Styles, in My Policeman. Was Harry Styles that bad, like everyone's saying, or are they being harsh on him, like Beer on Ever?
They're being harsh on people. People have sharpened their knives because he was so bad in that "Don't Worry, Darling" clip. Okay, he's not great here, but he's like, the way that people are coming down on him for this movie is like totally.
He's Tommy Wiseau.
Yeah, they're acting like he's Tommy Wiseau. They're acting like he's Mina Nasri of the film We, which is the best film of Tiff, which we won't be talking about today, but it is the best film of Tiff. But they're acting like this guy has no talent, and he does. I mean, there's definitely some very funny moments in this film. Like, for example, there's one point where someone's drawn a picture of Harry Styles' character, and he says something about, like, it's easy to be drawn for a picture when you're ordinary looking or something like that. Or like pictures of ordinary looking people look the best. The entire theater just laughed because it was like, yeah, okay, Harry Styles. Okay. But yeah, the movie is not very good. It's like if you think of the most average version of like a sad gay love story, that's what My Policeman is. Like if you think of like if you took out everything interesting about Brokeback Mountain and then you set it in Britain, that is My Policeman. It's like Diet Brokeback Mountain set in 1960s England. It's not a bad movie. It's just like, next film.
Next film, hopefully this is one that you feel better on, because this is one I actually selected. Number 40th overall, that is The Inspection. Clearly, this is a movie that a lot of people were high on, at least at New York, because it got one of their feature showcases that has yet to occur. But it showed at TIFF earlier, which you got to see it. And just overall, what are your thoughts about this movie?
Yeah, so this film did get a standing ovation at TIFF. People really, really liked it. I really liked it as well. It was a film that I didn't like very much at first. It felt very, very cliche in the scenes between Gabrielle Union and Jeremy Pope. It was like I just said with My Policeman, if you think about if I say the words sad gay drama, the first thing that comes into your mind is My Policeman. If I said coming of age movie where mother does not accept gay son, that's the beginning of The Inspection, where it's like, yeah, Gabrielle Union's character is everything that you would expect if you hear that her character is a homophobic mother to a gay son. And so at first I was like, oh, this feels very average. And then as the movie went on, I was like really getting into it. And by the end, I was smiling from ear to ear, which is not what I expected out of this movie. I was expecting, like My Policeman, a TM, sad gay drama. And it's not that. It's a film about camaraderie. It's a film about... the director, Elegance Bratton, he actually was in the military. This is a true story. And so when he was talking about his experience in the military, he was saying that it was... He has fond memories of being in the military. Not of war or anything, but... and this is not something that you'd expect, because like when I heard, this is a movie about a gay man going through basic training in the military, I was like, this is going to be a movie about horrible things happening to this person the entire time. And it is, but it isn't. It's a film about acceptance, and not just acceptance of yourself, but acceptance of the people around you. And that's not saying that the other characters in this film become good humans who suddenly are not bigots anymore. They still remain bigots at the end. But they, by the end of the film, stop seeing this character as a label. They see him as another one of their brothers, another soldier. And so in a way, it's a bit of a heartwarming story, because it is a film about acceptance and about finding your people, and how our identity at the end of the day, our identity matters because it makes up who we are. But no matter what our identity is, we can accept other people. And so I think that this was a really good film. Is it going to the Oscars? No. I know at the beginning of the fest I saw all the Oscar pundits, like Clayton Davis and Matt Neglia, being like, Gabrielle Union, Jeremy Pope, Oscars. It's not happening. That was just that appeared on it premiered on the Thursday night where nothing else played. So what else are you going to latch onto other than the one movie that played that night, other than The Swimmers? Mm-hmm. So this will get indie spirits. And one thing I will say right now, Elegance Bratton will be nominated or win an Oscar one day. It's not going to be for this film, but this is his debut. And I was just struck by how much promise this filmmaker has, especially to make a story about the military and about brotherhood and about acceptance that had so much nuance to it, and wasn't just a film where a bunch of bigots become less bigoted. It had the nuance of they're not... They haven't changed their views, but they accept him as a person, regardless of that. Super interesting. I liked it. It's good. Indie spirits.
So going from a movie that the director is someone who just has a lot of just knowledge and just good at what they do, to another movie with a director like that, of Henry Selick with Wendell and Wild, but also has had a little bit of just internet buzz around it from for a lack of word, what you just said, like bigots, went a little wild because of some stuff that occurs in the movie. Key and Peele are finally back together, which is a highlight for a lot of people, me included, but I saw that you were maybe not the highest on this movie. Overall, do you think this movie's dead for animation because Netflix also has Pinocchio in its bag, or do you think this still has a shot to get in at the end of the day?
It has a shot because it's Henry Selick. Also, you mentioned that people were upset about this film. Has buzz about like what happens in this film already come out? Like, are people already?
I
talking
haven't
about
seen buzz about specific details. Just I don't think this is a spoiler, so I haven't seen this movie obviously. But there was talk of a transgender character, which obviously people who are bigots aren't going to be on board for that, and that's all I've seen about it, not for specific details of what's actually like occurred in the movie.
Dude, conservative parents are gonna hate this movie because it's gonna be like blasted all over Netflix, and they're gonna be like this is a film that like it directly picture like an animated movie that then takes a stance against like the prison industrial system and is like, hey, prisons should be abolished. Like that's this film, which I respect. I really respect that it like went all out for that. But yeah, no, you're right. I was disappointed by this film, but that's not for any reasons to do with like the identity of the characters or the politics of the film. I think that all of that was extremely well done, and I think it's important to have animated films that are so representational. Like in this film, there are so many different identities represented on screen, from race to sexuality to gender. There's so much representation, and I think any kid will be able to see themselves in this film, especially because this is clearly a film that's made for the outcasts. It's made for kids who might not see themselves represented all the time. It's going to make an impact on a lot of kids. Now, what disappointed me was that the story was all over the place in this film. It is a bit of a mess, if I'm being completely honest. The world building in this is really shoddy. It's not very well done. It's very, honestly, a little bit not hard to follow at times, but it gives you not much reason to follow it. Also, Key and Peele are in it. And it is... there's not enough of them. They're the best part of the film, and they are side characters at best. And that's really disappointing because the film should be their story, and it's not. And to be fair, though, like when I say it should be their story, I'm glad that the story it was about an orphaned black girl who has this sort of connection to the spirit world, who's this sort of outcast in so many ways, as someone who's gone through juvie, as someone who's been through so much stuff, including like watching her parents die. That's not a spoiler. That is just the basic premise of the film. But yeah, it's... even though it's important to have that character, it still felt like Key and Peele should have been the center of the film, and not having enough of them really did hurt it. It's not dead in animation. I'd say it's still top 10, but there's no way Netflix prioritizes this over Pinocchio. This just feels like it's a very minor, like, Netflix filler movie. It's probably going to come and go in, like, 2 or 3 weeks.
So moving from one movie that disappointed to another one that I heard you were a little lower on than most people,
Yeah.
it was Corsage at number 49.
Yeah,
Costumes, is this still a player?
Corsage was a film that I picked on my team because I was like, this has so much potential because it could run into international, it could get costumes, and it could get actress. And I'm so disappointed in Corsage. Now, this is a film, it stars Vicky Krieps, who plays the Empress Sissi of Austria. My God. So I love period pieces. I think period pieces are the most fun types of movies, including the one that we're going to talk about right after this, Chevalier. I love period pieces. I think that when you get great costumes and great sets and great actors and great lighting, there's something that feels so magical and cinematic about it, because truly a period piece is something that you can't experience anywhere else. You can see a drama happen in everyday life, but period pieces are heightened reality. It takes us into history. It takes us into a different time. And the thing that I found so disappointing about Corsage is it felt so low effort in the period elements of it. So the costumes were really good. I still think it can get into costumes. I still do think it has a chance at international, although I would put it far away from that. But the thing that bugged me about this movie is that in the production design, it felt like they were just walking into old houses, not changing anything about them, despite the fact that this film is set in like 1878, when that was the first year that that electric lights that weren't like massive were commercially available. Every single room was lit by electrical lighting. Every single room had like lamp fixtures that were like modern lamp fixtures. At times they would just not cover up electrical outlets. They would just not cover up very modern stuff. And to me, I just don't know why you make a period piece without bothering to decorate spaces to make it feel like we're actually in the period. So it was either that spaces were modernized, or it looked as though they went into abandoned old houses that maybe in that era in 1878 would have been these grand opulent places, but now the paint's peeling off the walls and the floorboards are like missing and it's gross to look at, and they would just act as though that's the space. And like okay, I guess you could say that could be purposeful, and that it's like, you know, very much looking back at history with this lens, and that's what the music's doing as well, because it's like, you know, the music that they're playing is modern music, but it really didn't work for me. And when I go and see a period piece, I want it to be like Chevalier, which we're about to talk about, where it's just opulent, and you know the sets and the costumes just look beautiful, and it transports us into a different era. And Corsage just made me feel like I was watching a group of community theater actors playing a game of charades. It did nothing for me.
Well, hopefully Chevalier did, because Kelvin Harrison Jr. is one of my favorite actors. This is a 2023 release. Most likely, there's no official word, but there's also no official word that it's a 2022. But do you think it's a shot? Let's say this isn't coming out this year, it's coming out next year. Do you think he has a shot for actor just super far out, or do you think it's just too small of a movie? No,
he wouldn't even have a shot for actor this year. I think that this is the personal history of David Copperfield 2.0. That said, this is much better than Personal History of David Copperfield, which I didn't really love. This is a fantastic historical movie. It has so much energy to it. The camera movement is gorgeous. Like, it just flows perfectly, and like some of the long takes in this are exceptional. And Kelvin Harrison Jr. is great. He keeps the whole thing afloat. Costumes are great. The lighting is fantastic. I liked everything about this movie. But the fact of the matter is, so Disney had D23 this past weekend, and they announced their full slate for 2022, and it's not on it. So, you know, it's basically officially confirmed it's coming out next year. Now, if this film releases in the fall of next year, it could get in for costumes, and Kelvin Harrison Jr. could get in for a few acting noms here and there. Probably not the Oscars, but he could go as far as Peter Dinklage did. But being fully real, this is probably going to be released in April, and it's going to be dead, which is sad. It's really sad, because this is a very good film. I learned after watching it that the director of this film directed a few episodes of the show Watchmen, which is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. So knowing that, I was like, yeah, I see that. I completely see it. You're going to love this, Dylan. You're really going to like it.
Great. I'm super excited.
It's like Amadeus, but with like more energy to it.
Because, I mean, like, you mentioned Peter Dinklage. Cyrano, Kelvin Harrison Jr. was in that as well. And honestly, I think he was the second best part about that movie after Haley Bennett. So really excited to see him in that same type of time period being the lead and getting to showcase just how great of an actor he is. But let's dive into the last movie that was drafted that you saw at the film with two great actors in it, Jennifer Lawrence, Brian Tyree Henry. That is a film I drafted all the way back in 2020 under the name of Red, White, and Water, but now it's coming out this year under the name of Causeway. So just overall, 2 years later, is this movie great? Is it good? Was there a reason why it was delayed that long? Just overall thoughts.
It's good. It's really small. I had this floating around my number 40 spot in Best Picture, and I took it out entirely because it's so small. It's a very character-driven piece. The film focuses on Jennifer Lawrence plays a war veteran who had some traumatic stuff happen to her head, and so now she's in rehabilitation, and she moves home. And through the film, we're basically seeing how trauma manifests, and she meets Brian Tyree Henry's character, who's a mechanic who has dealt with his own trauma in his life. Brian Tyree Henry gives one of the best performances of the year. Hands down. Hands down, one of the best performances of the year. So good. An interesting thought that I had here, though, I still think Red, White, and Water was a better title for this film. But in a way, being called Causeway, while it makes less sense for the film, it shifts the focus from Lawrence to Brian Tyree Henry. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but the reason that it's called Causeway is because of his character, whereas the reason it would be called Red, White, and Water is because of her character, because she gets a job as a pool cleaner. And so obviously there's the red, white, and blue of the American flag, but the water comes into play because she's a water technician. That's what she did in Afghanistan, and now she cleans pools. And so it's a film about patriotism and about veterans and how we treat our veterans, and specifically, she left the military and now she scoops leaves out of pools in New Orleans. But calling it Causeway shifts the focus of the film onto the importance of Brian Tyree Henry's character's trauma. I won't say anything more. Now, what I will say about this is it has some chances at Indie Spirit Awards, specifically for the acting. And I think that if we see the actress category continue to collapse, if Naomi Ackie underperforms, if Olivia Colman, if Empire of Light keeps crashing into the ground, if Danielle Deadwyler doesn't really land in Till, if some of the other films underperform, I could see Jennifer Lawrence making it in. It's a very subtle performance. It reminds me a lot of Winter's Bone in terms of smallness and subtlety. I would love to see Brian Tyree Henry get into the awards race here because he's so good. But I don't think that'll happen. I think it's too small of a film.
Well, Brian Tyree Henry, if we're talking about people overdue, he was due, and If Beale Street Could Talk, for his one beautiful scene. And at the Emmys, he's due as well because, I mean, obviously this isn't an Emmys podcast, it's an Oscars podcast, but every time they nominate Donald Glover, I love Donald Glover, but Brian Tyree Henry's the king of every season of Atlanta. And we're talking about someone that we want to see nominated. Let's dive into some movies that weren't selected that we want to see nominated, at least this first one, because that is that little donkey named EO. It should have placed in the People's Choice, like you said, but he's got a long way to go for the Oscars. But can he get in for Best International Feature? Yeah,
I mean, this was picked by Poland. I think we've joked about this film on the podcast, but we haven't had a serious conversation about EO. So EO is a Polish film. It's about a donkey. And when I say it's about a donkey, I mean the donkey is the main character of the film. There are very few other characters. It's the donkey. We follow it as it wanders across Europe, and we see the world through its eyes. It's a beautiful film. It's sold out, all screenings of the film at Tiff, and it played in IMAX, which would have been so crazy to see. I saw it before the fest, and I absolutely love this film. And I programmed it for a different festival because I work as a programmer sometimes for film festivals. So I love this film. It's one of my favorites of the year. Can this make it to international feature? I actually think that it can, and I think that, you know, stuff like what we're doing, stuff like what's happening on Twitter, people are talking about this film and it's getting memed, and I think that this is a film that could get memed all the way to the Oscars because people are saying this is so unique, this is so different, and in that sense, I think that there's a chance that this movie becomes a contender. Wouldn't that be wild?
Good.
That would be great.
It would be wild. First off, shout out to you for surfing all the EO fans and making more EO fans actually by programming at your festival. 2, usually I'm not a huge fan of memeing something into popularity, but if it's for a good cause like this, I'm all in support. But speaking of another thing that's been memed about online the last few weeks, that's Florence Pugh and her involvement in Don't Worry, Darling. And that brings us to our next movie that you got to see. This is another Netflix possible contender. We have The Wonder. Is this anything, or is this like a good reason why it wasn't drafted? And
yeah. So when I did my last pick, if you remember in our draft episode, I was very much between this film, The Good Nurse, and Matilda. Which are all Netflix films, and now I've seen both The Good Nurse and The Wonder, so I'll talk about both of those here. And I will say I actually still feel good about my decision to take Matilda. Now, with The Wonder, I'll talk about The Good Nurse actually really quickly right now. Good Nurse, totally mediocre. It's okay. It's serviceable. It's not going anywhere. Jessica Chastain's all right. Eddie Redmayne's all right. Neither of them are a contender. They're all right. They're fine. I'm glad that I didn't pick those two. Now, The Wonder, I really liked a lot. I thought it's one of, I would put it in my top 15 of the fest. I think that there's a lot of really excellent stuff here, including Florence Pugh. But that said, Florence Pugh, I do not think that she is coming for any nominations, especially because Netflix did a very interesting thing, which is that a couple weeks ago when they announced all their release dates, they announced the release date for The Wonder as being December 31st, which was the Lost Daughter slot. Then they released the poster for the film, and they changed the release date to November 16th. That to me says, we've seen the reviews, we're not pushing this. This is not our contender. So when I see that, that's immediately what I think is they know that this is not a contender. And it's not. It's a great film. It's a very relevant film about the battle between science and religion. But yes, this is it's not happening. But I hope that everyone here likes it because I really like it. I think it's excellent.
So we just talked about 2 movies that you were thinking about picking for your last pick to one I thought about picking for my last pick, and that was Devotion. But the big thing holding me back is because there's another movie involving planes, involving Glenn Powell, and that's called Top Gun Maverick. So obviously, I don't think Devotion was Maverick, but was it still a enjoyable experience?
No, so like Devotion is like if Top Gun Maverick is at the top, Devotion's it's like mid gun. It's not bottom gun. It's like mid gun.
Yeah.
It's so I've been a bit of a detractor on Top Gun Maverick. I think that it's a bit of a boring story. I find that everything in the air is spectacular. Everything on the ground bores me to death.
Fully support that.
Yeah. Now, Devotion has even less compelling story, even less compelling characters. And to make up for that as well, it doesn't even have the incredible aerial stunts that Top Gun has. So looking at Devotion, all I could think was this is it's nothing. This is going to be very rightfully overshadowed by Top Gun Maverick, which, that's too bad because there can and should be more than one movie that is exists in the same realm in the same year, but this just it doesn't succeed at the things it's trying to do, especially when you hold it up against Top Gun Maverick, which did so many amazing things with its stunts. This one just kind of is wow, that was average. Wow, that was average. Wow, that was average. Whereas Top Gun, a lot of the time you're that was incredible. This doesn't have any of that. Yeah.
So, I mean, you saw a ton of films at TIFF.
yeah.
Is there any other ones that you want to give a quick shout out to before we move into our final thing of just your overall awards for the festival?
Yeah, some of the other ones that I know next week, because these films are coming out very soon. We will be talking about Pearl, which I know that you will be seeing by next week. Moon Age Daydream. Ooh, I hope you enjoy it. I really liked it. So I will talk about that next week because we both will have seen it. Moon Age Daydream. I will also say I missed some movies. I did not get to see The Woman King because it's out in theaters now, so I'm going to go see it like probably in the next couple of days or so. So we're also going to talk about that next week. I also, through no fault of my own, did not get to see The Eternal Daughter. I did not get to see The Menu. There was a handful of other movies that I also did not get to see, but those two, The Menu stung, not getting to see that. I was like, oh my God, how did I not see that one? But the scheduling just didn't work out for it. But I mostly saw everything I wanted to. So some other movies, just quick shout outs for, there's been a lot of talk online about The People's Joker, which is a Batman parody film, which follows a transgender Joker, who has been addicted to laughing gas for her entire life, and forms an illegal comedy theater underground in Gotham City. This film's been talked about a lot because it got pulled from TIFF due to rights issues. It's pretty good. I wouldn't say that I think it's I don't know. I think it's one of the most badass acts of resistance that I've seen in a film. There's some things that I feel iffy about in the film. Like I think that in terms of storytelling, it could be a little bit stronger, but the film, the fact that it exists and the fact that they're doing this with it, it's so badass. It's such a testament to how art can be an act of resistance against corporations, and it's a testament to how you can reinvent our current myths, which are superheroes, into something entirely new, and taking this story and recontextualizing it with an underrepresented community is so bold and badass, and the film's really funny and very fun to watch, and I had a great time with it. So if you get a chance to see it, which you will, because despite the fact that people are saying like, oh, free The People's Joker, that's really all marketing right now. The film's not as illegal as people are saying it is. It's not. It's parody. It's protected, and it will be released probably for free on the internet. Then I saw I Like Movies before the fest. Now this is it's a Canadian film. It's a lovely movie. It is a story of a 17-year-old kid who wants to be a famous director, and he gets a job at a video rental store like a Blockbuster. And the film just follows him as he struggles with getting through his trauma, and he uses movies as a coping mechanism. And it's a lovely film. It reminds me of, it's like Adventure Time, or not Adventure Time, Adventure Land. Adventure Time is the cartoon, and Adventure Land is the movie with Jesse Eisenberg. So Adventure Land, or The Way Back, or Kings of Summer, those types of teen coming-of-age movies that are very funny but have a little bit of melancholy to them. I Like Movies is fantastic, and I hope that it makes its way into the United States, because this is a film that truly deserves to be seen outside of Canada. I also want to mention Weird, the Al Yankovic story, which is very silly. It's very funny. It will be available on Roku for free very soon. It is ridiculous and everything you could want out of a Weird Al biopic. Rest in peace, Weird Al. I can't believe he's gone so soon. Very funny film, and Daniel Radcliffe is great in it. I saw The Swimmers as well, which was the opening night film. It's another Netflix movie. No one drafted it, but I know at some point there was some talk like, oh, maybe this could be an Oscar thing. It's not. It's a pretty average inspirational sports story. It has some very good moments. I think that the director has a very promising future, but this movie felt like I talked a lot about like, oh, My Policeman. If you think sad gay drama, that's what you think of. Okay, if you think inspirational sports drama, this is what you think of with The Swimmers. And then the last movie from TIFF that I'm going to talk about today, even though, again, I saw 46 films at the festival and 24 films before, bringing my total of 70 films at TIFF that I've seen. This is the last film I'll talk about, though, but I will probably mention some of the other ones other times. But Saint Omer, which is a French film, it's currently shortlisted for France's submission to the Oscars. And it has a 92 on Metacritic. And people are saying it should be France's submission. I think it would be a big mistake if it was. It is a very dry film. It is a film where, for the most part, we're sitting in a courtroom listening to someone speak, but not in a courtroom drama way. Like, these are actual court transcripts, and our main character is not in the trial. She's just viewing the trial. And so for most of the film, what we're doing is we're following the main character as she sits down in a courtroom and listens to a court case. And it's just the lawyer and the accused speaking back and forth to each other, and it's entirely real transcripts. I get why this has a 92 on Metacritic. I found it to be incredibly dry, and I think that it would be a big mistake if France picked it, because it's not going anywhere near the Academy Awards, simply because it's a really tough watch. It's feels so long, and a lot of it is just like close-ups that last for like minutes at a time as characters are giving testimony in court. But I get why it's a 92 on Metacritic, because like it's doing some bold things. It's just not for me.
So, I mean, you said you saw 70 plus movies if you include everything before and during, and honestly, that's probably more than some actual Academy members view in a whole year for their thing.
For real.
Even though that's probably not like a good thing, but that's just kind of the way it goes. But with you seeing so many movies, I feel like you can probably build your own nominations just from TIFF.
That's
so
what we're going to do.
So why don't we rapid fire some of these? So let's start off with Best Picture.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'll give you my top.
Have as many as you
10.
want. Let's hear it. Let's start at 10.
Now, just to say, I have been wanting to do this TIFF awards thing for so long, and I've been thinking about it a lot. But I'm not going to go like full on into every category, because we're already like, this episode's so long because I saw so many fucking movies. So I'm going to try and go through as fast as possible. I'm not going to do full nominations for anything except Best Picture. So Best Picture, let's go to it. Honorable mentions here. The Worst Ones, which is a film from France. Super good. I like movies. Canadian, aforementioned. Godland. That is an Icelandic film. I don't think I've mentioned it on the show before, but it is so good. So top 10. Number 10, I'm going Living, which is Bill Nighy, and it's the British film. It's the remake of Ikiru. We've talked about it on the show before. That's why I didn't talk about it today. What a great film. So good. Number 9, Bros, one of the funniest comedies of the year. Warmed my heart, made me cry. Almost gave this a 10 out of 10. Probably will when I see it a second time. I thought it was lovely. Number 8, The Little Donkey That Could, EO, is my number 8 film of the festival. Number 7, Holy Spider. This is another film I saw before the festival. I think I've spoken about it on the podcast before. I won't go too deep into it. It's the movie that David Fincher wishes he made. Number 6 is Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery, which is so much fun. It is a thrilling mystery. It's packed full of just... I can't wait to see it again. It's so funny and so clever, and even though it is not very hard to solve the mystery, I'm not going to spoil anything. What Rian Johnson said was, it's not about the solution, it's about the ride. And Glass Onion is a total roller coaster ride. And just go along with it. It's so much fun. Number 5, All the Beauty and the Bloodshed. I talked about this in length earlier. It is a documentary, and it is a masterpiece. It is one of my favorite documentaries of all time. Number 4, All Quiet on the Western Front. I think that this is one of the best war movies ever made. It's brutal, and I will not stop thinking about it. Maybe ever. Like, it's going to be just ingrained in my brain. It's excellent. Number 3, The Fabelmans. Now, this moved up a lot, and if I didn't see it a second time, this would not have been on my list. But I did see it a second time, and it blew me away, and I love it, and it's so sweet. And so that's my number 3. Number 2, I've got Triangle of Sadness, which is a film that I've spoken about at length on previous episodes, and we'll probably speak again about at length when it releases in theaters in a couple of weeks. So I won't talk about that too much, but it's hilarious, and it remains my second favorite of TIFF. And number one is, you guessed it, Women Talking. Women Talking rules, and I'm so proud that this is a film coming out of Canada. Even if it's not a Canadian film, it is a film that was made very close to me and features people that I know in it. Love Sheila, and it's an excellent film, and it is my favorite of the festival. So I'm going to move to my next category, and I'm not going to... Actually, no, I actually do have a top 5 here. So I'll just list my my nominations. I was going to do honorable mentions, but I just have 5 here. So for Best Director, I have Laura Poitras for All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, Ruben Ostlund for Triangle of Sadness, Sarah Polley for Women Talking. My second place, so my runner-up here, would be Steven Spielberg for The Fabelmans. His direction is so personal, and it really elevates the sentimentality of the film and the screenplay to a whole other level. But my number one is Edward Berger for All Quiet on the Western Front. I think what he did here as a director is totally astounding, because it can be so easy as a filmmaker to make a war movie fun. And he did not do that. So I think he really did an exceptional job with direction. I would love to see this guy be the foreign language slot. I know I said that doesn't have to happen. There doesn't have to be a foreign language slot. I stand by that. But if there was one, it should be Edward Berger. And now we're going to get into the acting categories. Leading actor. So I've got 4 here. But let me, off the top of my head, I'm going to try and think of a number 5. No, it's not coming to me. Gabriel Labelle in The Fabelmans is one of my honorable mentions here. I think he is so talented, and he, especially in my second watch, he really grew on me. He does so well in the emotional scenes of the film, and all of the comedy scenes in it, he just absolutely nails. And he really captures Spielberg's essence very well. Bill Nighy, I've spoken a lot about on the show. He is so good in Living. He just delivers such a tender and sweet performance here. So my number 2 performance of the festival in the leading actor category is Brendan Fraser in The Whale, which a lot has been said. Actually, I think my number 1 and 2 are pretty interchangeable, but my number 1 at this very moment is Colin Farrell in The Banshees of Inisherin. My favorite of the fest. It's not a big performance. Brendan Fraser gives a very big emotional performance. Colin Farrell's a very small performance. But I think that he delivers a lot of subtlety and a lot of humor in this role that I think is just lovely. So yeah, that's my winner at the moment, but that could change anytime. Okay, leading actress, I've got 3 here. My honorable mention is Jennifer Lawrence in Causeway. Then I have Zahra Amir Abrahimi in Holy Spider, who won the Best Actress Award at Cannes. She's incredible. She gives such a powerful performance in this role in Holy Spider, and very much deserves to be second place, because number 1 is Mia Goth in Pearl. And I didn't talk about Pearl a lot. I won't talk about Pearl a lot here. But what I will say is that she is transformative in this role. She is terrifying in this role. She's really funny. And the end credits sequence of this film rivals Call Me By Your Name in terms of sheer, like, people were losing their goddamn minds. And she has a monologue near the end of the film that's just like, whoa. In a just world, Mia Goth would get an Oscar nomination. Maybe she will. Because Best Actress is such a shit show. Because we could have Naomi Ackie and Olivia Colman drop out of the race. Maybe Mia Goth comes in. She won't, but that would be super cool. And I can't wait to hear your thoughts on Mia Goth still. So supporting actor, I have 4 here. So I'm going to go Luke McFarlane from Bros as an honorable mention. Judd Hirsch from The Fabelmans as an honorable mention. He steals the whole movie. Like I said, he's a total scene stealer. He's hilarious. Number 2 here, I've got Brian Tyree Henry in Causeway. It's very subtle. It's a very emotional performance, and it's deeply felt. But number 1, I've got Seth Rogen in The Fabelmans. God, he's so funny, man. He is so funny. So yeah. I think Seth Rogen, and he's so warm and endearing, and like, it reminds me of his performance in Take This Waltz, which is interesting because Oh, I just made a connection. Sarah Polley made a film in 2011 called Take This Waltz, which starred Seth Rogen and Michelle Williams. And Michelle Williams played a character who was falling out of love with her husband, Seth Rogen. But the whole time you're like, oh, but Seth Rogen's so nice and he's so like loving and charming. And that's his character here. And then Michelle Williams is also in The Fabelmans. So there we go.
Connections.
But that brings me to supporting actress, and I'll start with my honorable mentions, of which Michelle Williams is one of my honorable mentions in this category. Like I said earlier, she is undoubtedly the front runner to win. She brings such tenderness to this role. And another character from The Fabelmans, who I haven't heard anyone mention, is Chloe East in The Fabelmans. She plays Monica, who is, I won't say too much about her, but what I will say is anytime she's on screen, people are losing their minds with laughter. She is so funny. She plays her role perfectly. And I think that she deserves to be mentioned as a great performance in this film. Along the likes of anyone else in that ensemble, Chloe East is wonderful. I also want to give an honorable mention to Jessie Buckley in Women Talking, but my top two for supporting actress are Janelle Monáe in Glass Onion, and my winner is Claire Foy in Women Talking. I can't wait for you guys to see what Janelle Monáe does in Glass Onion, though. Claire Foy has an emotional performance, but Janelle Monáe does so many layers with her performance, and honestly, I could see myself changing to Janelle Monáe being my number one very soon. So screenplay, I'm going to drop 4 here. So honorable mentions, Triangle of Sadness for being hilarious and very witty and very unique in structure. Bros for just having the most laughs of any film at the festival. And then the top 2, Glass Onion in second place for having a twisty, turny mystery that, like I said just before, is a roller coaster ride. You can solve it very quickly, but you will not figure out all the twists and turns, and it is so much fun to uncover all of the layers there. But number 1, Women Talking. Oh my god, that screenplay is so good. Cinematography. Oh my god, I know I'm going on so long today, but like, this is Tiff. I'm so sorry, just bear with me here. Cinematography, I've got 2 honorable mentions and 2 winners here. So for cinematography, I want to give a shout out to Women Talking, which a lot of people are jumping all over and saying like, the cinematography is so shit. Wrong. It's gorgeous cinematography. The lighting is great. What people don't like is the color grade, which is very monochromatic. But I think it's used to perfect effect because it makes the whole film feel unstuck in time. It makes it feel like it's a different time, a different place, a different era. It makes it feel like it could be a fairy tale. This color grade doesn't belong on planet Earth. And so in that way, I think it's very purposeful because Sarah Polley keeps referring to Women Talking as a fable, as a fairy tale. And that's what this feels like. Then Decision to Leave. I mean, you saw the trailer, Dylan. That cinematography is gorgeous. And it is. It's fantastic. Park Chan-wook is absolutely incredible at what he does, and the cinematography is great. Number 2 for cinematography, though, my runner-up, I've got Godland. And Godland, if you thought that The Northman was the best movie about a a medieval person walking through Iceland and seeing a lot of pretty views, you're wrong. The Northman is not the best Icelandic movie about a medieval person walking through Iceland. Godland is. It's gorgeous cinematography. The way the camera moves is incredible. But my number 1 for cinematography is All Quiet on the Western Front. Dear God, it looks good. But again, not in a way that's pretty, in a way that's gritty and very dark and very gross and just perfect. And last, I wasn't going to do score, but there was so much good music at the festival that I feel like I have to mention some music. So the first honorable mention that I'm going to give, and there's going to be a lot more honorable mentions than normal because there's a lot of really, really great scores this year. So the first one's going to be Carmen. Now, Carmen was not a film that I've liked very much. It was the last film I saw at the festival, and it did not do anything for me. But the score, which is written by Nicholas Britell, is absolutely electric. And it saves the film from being borderline unwatchable. But the musical score is just gorgeous. Other honorable mentions, I want to mention Pearl, which is fantastic symphonic score. Reminds me a lot of like Disney movies of the 1930s. Makes the whole thing feel a little bit like Wizard of Oz, which is the vibe. Pearl is totally the Wizard of Oz meets like Misery or like Stephen King. You know, it's got those vibes to it. It's really good. Then I also want to mention Decision to Leave and Holy Spider, which both have very, very lush scores. But my runner-up for best score would be All Quiet on the Western Front, which has a jarring score. Like, I'm talking like heavy electronic, like industrial sounds going on behind this movie that's set in 1918. And at first I was like, that's an interesting choice. But every single time I heard that electronic score coming back, all I could feel in my gut was like, oh God, this is something horrible is going to happen right now. And so the score is so effective. Number one score of the festival, though, is Women Talking. Oh, I also forgot to mention the Fabelmans. Fabelmans, very good score. But Women Talking is my number one of the fest. Hildur Guðnadóttir outdid herself with this. It reminds me a lot of Johnny Greenwood's work on Power of the Dog. I think that the score here is so incredible. And like I said, with cinematography, it adds to making the whole film feel like a fairy tale or a fable. It's gorgeous. It's so gorgeous.
Well, that was a lot of nominations. I really like seeing everything that you got to see and just how it compares to each other. Because, like, yeah, we did the whole rundown of each individual movie, but actually seeing how you stack things up, like what screenplay you like the most, what supporting actor, which lead actress, director, score, yada yada. I really like seeing your list there, and I'm sure throughout the year some of your rankings there may change after you get to see these movies outside of the festival and whatnot. But because there's just so many things at the festival, was there just one movie that you really weren't expecting much of, but after you left, you're like, okay, this was like one of my favorites?
That was All Quiet on the Western Front. I went in not really expecting a whole lot out of it. But when I left, I was like, yeah, this is mind-blowingly good. And I love those surprises. And on the other hand, I also want to mention the film that I saw that got the most walkouts to it was Project Wolf Hunting, which is the goriest film of the year. It wasn't a film that I particularly liked, but I respect the hell out of because, like, wow, it went for it. Like, when I'm saying, like, people were sliding on blood on the floor, like, that's what this movie is. If you are a fan of horror, or you're a fan of, like, really gory action movies, you got to check out Project Wolf Hunting. It's nuts. But, yeah, I saw so many people walk out of that film. I wasn't a press screening, that said. But, yeah, there was a lot of, like, people who went in clearly not knowing what to expect that were just like, yeah, I can't handle this. And, like, walked out 30 minutes in and did not come back. So it was wild. But yeah, I want to thank everyone. This has been a much longer episode than normal because, again, there's been so much for me to, like, dissect with this week. So I want to thank you all for sticking with me through a longer episode. And Dylan, I want to thank you for being patient with me rambling on about these films that you have not seen and obviously want to see very badly.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I mean, I get to see Pearl this week. I get to see Moon Age Daydream this week. We both get to see Woman King. So there'll be a lot of stuff that I haven't seen yet that you have that we'll actually be able to have like a more formal conversation about. Because, I mean, Pearl, I'm really excited for it. Like I said, all those. And then, I mean, Don't Worry, Darling comes out this weekend. The Avatar re-release. There's a lot coming out. Blonde may become more available. Greatest Beer Run Ever. We're hitting that time of year where there's at least one or two big things every weekend. And it's not just like blockbusters. It's like actual Oscar contenders.
Yeah. And Dylan, you know what I'm going to see this week? Barbarian.
What are you going to see this week? Let's go. That's one. I'm not going to say anything. Just go in, have fun, and
we'll talk about it next week.
Next week, no, yes.
How scary is it? Because I'm a big wimp.
I don't think it's that scary.
Okay.
I don't think it's that scary. I don't want to. I have a better answer to that, but if I say that answer, it could like feed into like specifics of the movie. But base level, I don't think it's that scary.
Okay.
With that being said, I don't find most actual horror movies scary. So I may not be the best judge, but I don't think it's an overtly scary film.
Okay, cool. I'm good with that. Well, I'm looking forward to it. And again, thank you for sticking with me through this.
Well, thank you for sharing your experience.
But right on. Thank you all for tuning into this week of Fantasy Filmball. We're very much looking forward to next week because we do have a lot of movies to talk about. It will not be this long, but we will have lots to talk about, as we will every single week between now and the Academy Awards. But until then, my name's Matt.
And I'm Dill, and this is Fantasy Filmball. Thank you for tuning to this episode of Fantasy Filmball with Matt and Dill. Keep up to date with us on Twitter at @Filmball. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you prefer to listen to podcasts. We even upload a video format of the podcast to YouTube if you want to see our faces. Thank you for listening to this episode of the show, and come back next week.